the strongest support of the Fourth Hokage. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 78, Despicable Kindness, Part 2. Run. Run. If you delay, the voice, distinctly bloody, echoed nervously behind them. All the father could do was hold him in his arms and flee even more frantically. I'll kill them all, a flash of blade. The deadly, swift meteor pierced the bodies of the tribesmen with unstoppable force. Before the screams and cries could fade, the terrifying sword eagerly sucked the blood of the next victim. There was only one enemy. But before him, the tribesmen were like lambs to the slaughter. Don't look back. Run, clan leader Danzo shouted a warning. For a clan leader, what could be more painful than watching his own people being slaughtered? But Danzo had no choice. He knew that from the moment he decided to lead his entire clan down this path, sacrifice was inevitable. But the great god seemed to find this boring drama insufficiently amusing. The man, grinning and relishing the chase, brandished the Grim Reaper's scythe, as if heaven had bestowed upon Liangai the greatest mockery. Kazuki. 3 times expelled from the Mist Shadow Anbu for excessive slaughter. But there was no doubt that this Kazuki genius possessed terrifying power. Danzo clenched his fists, nearly gritting his teeth. He hadn't expected Kazuki to go this far for a decades-old grudge. This move had practically sealed Liangai's path to survival. They had already left the walls of Mist Shadow Village, but there was still a long way to go to reach the designated location agreed upon with Danzo. Chunsen's gaze swept over the remaining members of his clan. Compared to the over 100 they had just fled, there were now fewer than 20 left. With this killer chasing them, if they simply ran, they wouldn't stand a chance. Zuna, clan leader, amidst the chaos, a relatively calm female voice reached his ears, but the panic in her eyes betrayed his fear. Chunsen finally held Yu Yin tightly in his arms. Live, these were the last words Yu Yin heard from her father. Take him away. Yes, the already thin group split apart again. Less than 10 of them, Yu Yin, the protector, fled quickly, while Chunsen, the last remaining members of Liang Yi, paused. Tisk, Gu Idenkiyu made no secret of his disdain. His katana held him without hesitation, and his pace remained unchanged. He charged straight towards the Liang Yi clan. In his eyes, even the patriarch of the Ryoji clan was nothing more than a slightly more powerful insect. You two? Trying to stop a chariot, the blades flashed fiercely, but at the moment of contact, Danzo smiled. He had never intended to survive from the beginning. Having killed his own son, he had no right to continue as the patriarch of the Ryoji clan. But today's sacrifice was necessary. He had let the seed of hope fade, and no matter the outcome, he could not let Ryoji's last hope die. So come on. The one and only genius of the Hazuki clan, the demon slayer wielding a katana. Water style, explosive water break, his face was still stained with crimson blood. The scorching temperature and the salty, fishy smell were slowly cooling down and turning bitter as he ran along. No matter how precocious he was, Yuan was, after all, just a 5-year-old child. Born in Liangai. In the world of ninja, he had to face such cruel and real things when other children were still babbling and playing with their parents. He could almost feel death brushing past him constantly. The tension of his heart suddenly contracting had completely paralyzed his nerves. When his father handed the young boy to Sister Zuna's arms, he had already vaguely felt something. But when that tall figure really turned around and left, he could do nothing. His hands and feet suddenly lost consciousness, and his whole body was left with only those cursed eyes, still staring at the direction his father left. He couldn't even shed tears. Yu Yin, you have to be strong. Yu Yin, you must live. Sister Zuna's familiar voice kept echoing in his ears. That haggard and sad voice made his closed heart be struck again and again. Sadness turned into tide, and when the young Yu Yin didn't understand what heartache was, fate taught him a cruel lesson. Ho-ha, that devilish voice soon rang out here. Not surprisingly, Jun-sen, who was just an ordinary Junin, had no way to stop Kyu of Gu Ideng. The silver blade light, blazing in the darkness, kept approaching, yet, like a cat playing with a mouse, it refused to devour them all in one gulp. Run! Run! The life-threatening cry was like an invisible hand, a single squeeze in the endless, unknown darkness, ready to shatter them at any moment. Dang! In the midst of that deadly despair, another light suddenly illuminated Yin Yu's vision from the opposite direction. The intense light obscured his view of the figure, yet Gu Idenkiyu, who had been unstoppable from the start, was forced to pause for the first time. "Who are you?" a voice rang out, 3 parts shock and 7 parts anger. But the questioning of the genius of the Gu Ideng family elicited no response. "Take them away first." Yes, it was the first time Yin Yu had heard this mysterious voice, and as if by some kind of destiny, the tears that had been lingering in his eyes finally burst at this moment. Xianyang returned his gaze to the furious man in front of him. He predicted the direction of the slash, and the kunai in his hand easily blocked the opponent's series of attacks. Next, it was time to make him quiet down. P.S. The Senju clan's bodyguard number 1 has arrived. Chapter 79, Direct Lineage. The kunai in his grip suddenly spun. Hidden behind the mask, Kazuki couldn't even see Shinayu's expression, nor those eyes radiating a terrifying light. He pretended to draw his sword backward, then used the distance to swing forward, finally using the blood to evade his own attack, and then attacked me? I saw it all clearly. Is he really from the Kazuki clan? I'd been suspicious since I saw that white hair, and now it seems to be true. This special blood that can transform the entire body into liquid, is a disaster for an enemy who only specializes in physical attacks. However, conversely, if one attempts to resist the opponent's attack head-on while in liquid form, rather than avoiding it, the burden will be considerable, just like when Sujetsu fought the Eight Tails. In this respect alone, the Kazuki family's techniques and Shinayu's wood-release technique seem to have some similarities. However, for this type of melee ninja who relies on skills and special bloodstains, Xianyang, who has the ability to foresee the future, is almost their natural enemy. Judging from the series of chases just now, Kyu Gu Ideng is probably already at the level of an elite Chunin, but this status is mostly due to his special bloodstains and excellent swordsmanship. However, these assets that he is proud of seem to have no meaning to Xianyang. The momentum remains unchanged. Facing the opponent's expected sword draw, Xianyang even retreated to open up the distance for the opponent to attack. Lightning flashed in the eyes of the two men, and in the instant of battle, Kyu finally made the most strong decision, even though in his eyes, it was a perfect opportunity. Assault. His hands were raised too high, the razor-sharp katana held high overhead. Under normal circumstances, such a move would be suicidal. His center was wide open, and while a downward swing increased its power and destructive force, the subsequent delay between strikes was further extended. In a life-or-death ninja battle, few would resort to such a move. But the Hazuki clan was an exception. Possessing a special blood stain, they could easily utilize their liquid form to evade close-range blows. Meanwhile, the moment their opponents were stunned by the horrific blood stain, the most devastating blows often sealed their fate. This time, of course, was no exception. Like every opponent he had faced, he foolishly stabbed himself with a kunai. That body, like a lake. How could even a sharp blade sever the flow of water? Damn it! His power had accumulated to its peak, and the subsequent downward strike was almost thunderous. Kyu felt a pity. Masked opponents couldn't appreciate their expressions of shock and fear. Crack! It wasn't the dull echo of a blade piercing flesh, nor the terrifying sound of blood spurting. The sensation, like being struck by rotten cotton, finally made Gu Idenkiyu cautious for the first time. But Alice, he only had one chance, and he had already missed it. The blade pierced Zhen Yuang's shoulder and lodged itself in his heart, yet his movement remained unimpeded. For a body made of wood, this level of damage had no effect at all. Meanwhile, his right hand, thrust into the opponent's chest and abdomen, became the most deadly weapon. Yang release physique. As long as he couldn't control it, Zhen Yuang could absorb the life force of any living thing for his own use, whether it was flowers, birds, fish, insects, or even the opponent's chakra, life force. Even with the help of wood release, the process was incredibly fast. Otherwise, the tree world descent wouldn't have been the secret technique capable of controlling the Nine Tails. The more violently the opponent struggled, the more chakra was mobilized, and the power of the technique would also increase with this absorption. Not to mention, This time Sanyoung did not use wood release, but directly used his own hands. In addition, the opponent happened to turn into the liquid with the weakest resistance. The powerful absorption force absorbed ki used chakra almost completely at the moment of contact, and on top of that, the originally liquid body slowly restored its original posture, and then it dried up and aged rapidly. It is very dangerous to have physical contact with an opponent who you are not sure of winning. Therefore, in front of those extremely powerful opponents in the past, Sanyoung has never used these wood release abilities. But the idiot in front of him is obviously not that strong. The fighting time was shorter than expected. Zuna couldn't even believe it. The man in front of her killed the scary Kazuki without any effort. Or was this the real strength of Konoha? Her thoughts raced, but Zuna knew that at this moment, everyone's safety was in the hands of this man. Gone, is that so? Sanyoung frowned. Although the little brat who awakened the bloodstains was still alive, the originally huge family now only had 2 or 3 of these big cats and kittens. Including that little brat, there were only 6 left. Sanyoung was silent for a moment, then continued, I think you should know your current situation, indeed. For a ninja family, people are indispensable. Without a sufficient base of clan members to support them, the clan simply couldn't continue. Including young Master Yuian, a clan of 6 people total. We are willing to become your vassal. In this eerie silence, a childish voice suddenly rang out. Yuian, who had been held in Zuna's arms since the beginning, finally spoke, even though the tears were still on his face. Young Master Yuian, Zuna wanted to say something, but swallowed it back. For Liangai at this moment, there was no more practical solution than this. In a place like Konoha, where powerful clans abounded, what could Liangai do now? I want to become your vassal, the child said. Chapter 80, The Future of Konoha. So you think the current Ryuji isn't capable of becoming a force for Konoha? Danzo sat in the basement, his eyes closed. Before him, Shinhei was respectfully reporting on his mission. Yes, Lord Danzo, there are only 6 members of the Ryuji clan left, and only one, Ryuji Yujin, has awakened his so-called bloodline limit. Is that your judgment? This is my humble opinion. The silence didn't last long. Danzo's chuckle broke the eerie atmosphere. Ha, very good. You've already begun to learn how to rally your own forces. Upon hearing this, Shinhei's heart tightened. Indeed, playing such a trick under Danzo's nose was a recipe for disaster. But then again, Shinhei hadn't expected the old man to remain oblivious to this. The Senju clan has re-entered the Uchiha clan's radar. Since the Shodaime, the current Senju clan has long since lost the concept of a clan. Princess Tsunade is naturally of little concern to the main clan, but I, your subordinates, must make plans for my own clan as soon as possible. Shinhei calmly laid out the reasoning he had prepared from the outset. Indeed, with his appearance, the Senju clan has once again entered the Uchiha clan's radar. Before this, no matter how brilliant and powerful Princess Tsunade was, she had never truly wielded this power over the Uchiha clan. But Shinhei was different. The fear of wood release had long been ingrained in the Uchiha bloodline, like a genetic gene. Now, thanks to Shinhei's appearance, the Senju clan is poised for reunification, so given the opportunity, the Uchiha clan will not hesitate to take advantage of their misfortune. The most difficult part is that Shinhei cannot harm the interests of the Senju clan, while also not suppressing the Uchiha clan too much. Otherwise, as in the original story, the possibility of the Uchiha clan's demise will be greatly increased. What he needs is a balancing force, or perhaps a devouring force. Let's do this according to your idea. Yes, the dividing line of Minato Namikaze. The war is over, but Jiraiya-sensei has not returned yet because he is still taking care of the children of Rain Village. And Minato is not doing nothing now. Hatake Tsukumo's injuries have almost recovered, and as the leader of Minato, Shinhei and Jiu, his duties have been completed. After all, now, his disciples have grown up and have become powerful ninjas who can stand on their own. However, for Minato, who preferred to win by speed the most among the 3, Tsukumo had one last thing to give him. Minato, listen carefully. No ninja wants to have no one to carry on their skills, and I am certainly no exception. Tsukumo, who is always cold and stoic, seemed a little out of character today, but that was understandable. After all, judging by the content, today's conversation might very well bring a new Konoha White Fang to the ninja world. No, considering Minato's own talent, Tsukumo was almost certain that his achievements would definitely surpass his own in the future. Teacher Tsukumo, What exactly is? Tsukumo waved his hand, motioning for Minato to listen to him attentively. What I am going to teach you today is a jutsu that I created myself. But I must make it clear in advance that whether or not to practice this jutsu is entirely up to you. Yes, this jutsu is indeed White Fang's strongest weapon, but it is undeniable that this jutsu that was born by chance is also accompanied by huge risks. In the process of training, any tiny mistake may have devastating consequences. Even if it can be made up for, it may mean the end of the ninja career. Teacher Tsukumo, what kind of jutsu is? Tsukumo took out a scroll that had been prepared long ago from his arms and handed it to Minato. Hokage style, body tempering method, that's right. What is recorded here is the secret about Konoha White Fang that countless people are drooling over, such a powerful secret, a powerful and astonishingly fast physical technique. Minato saw that a certain door in front of him was pushed open. At the same time, using Shinayu's own connections, the Ryuji clan, who came from afar, finally found a place to stay. The Senju family's ancestral home was very large, and it was more than enough to accommodate them, but according to the rules, outsiders were not allowed to live here. However, these things were simply impossible in the face of Shinayu's insistence. Although for the entire Konoha, Shinai was at most a young talent, whether in terms of strength or reputation, and could not be compared with Tsunade, who was recently honored as one of the 3 ninjas, but within the Senju clan, Shinayu, who possessed wood release, almost enjoyed a status like a young clan leader. This was almost unimaginable for the Senju clan, which had split into many branches. The Senju family's ancestral home was very spacious. For Uien, who had lived in extreme poverty since childhood, such a living environment was almost a dream come true. But now, young Uien showed no signs of excitement. He had lost his brother, killed by his own father. Later, his father was killed by the pursuing enemy while trying to protect him. Clan, friends, family. Young Uien had everything taken away from him almost overnight, and after that night, he never cried again. Nothing could bring him back to despair, and that tall, powerful figure became the goal of his lifelong pursuit. As if sensing his master's decision, those beautiful eyes once again shone with a dazzling, beautiful brilliance. Chapter 81, Boys. After that, Shinai carried out several more missions for the route. Compared to the years he spent away from home during the war, returning only once every 10 days or half a month was a much better situation. But what parent wouldn't want their children to stay with them? Especially in a profession as risky as ninja. Every mission was essentially a gamble with one's life. Safe, comfortable, and non-dangerous missions wouldn't be needed for ninjas. Nanmu and Mizuho, both Jonin, were even ninja speaking, so they wouldn't object to Shinayu's actions. However, the couple, who had rarely enjoyed family happiness since childhood, felt a certain regret. But Yujin's arrival filled this gap to a great extent. According to Senju clan rules, it's forbidden to take in exiled ninja from other countries. Although Shinayu could easily suppress such matters with his authority, to avoid making things difficult for everyone, he persuaded the Yaji family to change their stance and serve as the Senju clan's protectors from now on. Yoha Yujin. This was the little boy's new name. I wondered if it was an illusion. Although Yu was the surname of one of the most prominent guard families in the Senju clan's heyday, putting it before Xiao Yuan's name, ahem, it always sounded like a girl's name. No, this must be an illusion. Shinai rubbed his brows with a slight headache. Now the captain of the root division, he was rarely at home. Upon learning that his friend had received the true teachings of Tsukumo, he was initially overjoyed, but his mother ordered him to buy cooking supplies. Since Minato was also eager to study the scroll, Shinai had no choice but to head out. Let me see, 2 bottles of soy sauce. After retirement, Mizuho was now a true housewife, especially since Shinai's safe return. She was quite proficient in cooking and gardening. Well, at least the little son, who had been living at home, had been having trouble walking lately. It couldn't be helped, the food was just too good. So, was Kushina, who often came to eat, really training so hard to stay in shape? Shinai thought with a hint of malice, a rare mischievous smile flashing across his face. Because of the eagle incident, Shinai has been incredibly nervous lately. He's been pushing himself to improve almost every moment, not just in terms of his own strength, but more importantly, to gain the power to balance the situation. At the very least, he can't let Danzo push Uchiha directly into the abyss in this secret war. Well, today's a rare day off, So let's put this aside for now. If I keep looking worried all day, my parents will be worried, right? Yoshi, Shinayong patted his cheek and pulled himself together. Well, first of all, soy sauce soy sauce. Well. He spread his hands and shrugged. Anyway, this was all the old man's business and had nothing to do with him. Even if Mizuho's mother got angry at noon, it would definitely be only Dad who had no food to eat. Mom was always like this. When it came to Minato and himself, who were still teenagers, she always wanted to ask us to eat the whole plate. Really, in this kind of weather, we should have a cup of hot tea. How could we possibly finish all those cold dishes? Shinayong sat by the warm path, holding up the steaming teacup in front of him with one hand. He habitually looked towards the direction of his own courtyard. There. The ginkgo tree that had accompanied him and Minato growing up held a unique charm in the winter snow, but this time, looking from the house, the world outside was a sea of white. That cleanest and purest color adorned all the branches. In the blink of an eye, the splendor of autumn had put on a flawless plain dress, appearing cold and mysterious. But, against a backdrop of all white, that touch of purple-red seemed even more conspicuous. It was a breathtaking sight that defied all visual limitations, a beauty that could only be admired from afar. Clad in a kimono, her slender figure barely reaching Jinayong's waist, the girl seemed to be chasing something, running towards them in small steps, like a butterfly fluttering in the winter snow, her slightly flushed cheeks and lavender eyes reminding everyone that she was always a winter princess. For a moment, he lost his mind. Are you Aunt Sato's daughter next door? Jinayong asked, and the girl, still running in the snow, finally noticed him. She frantically clasped her hands to her chest, her already breathless appearance becoming even more charming and adorable. Oh, I remember seeing that little clay doll a few years ago. Was it called Sato Yoyako or something? Seriously, aren't they said girls are always ugly ducklings when they were young? She spoke 3 times in a row, but still couldn't finish a sentence. Don't worry. It's okay for you to come play here. I don't mind. Jinayong scratched his head. It was obvious that he couldn't possibly blame a child who looked like a Japanese doll. Tisk, humans are indeed visual creatures. No. Master Jinayong, how does she know my name? Jinayong's doubts didn't last long, because the next second he was petrified. I'm Yuan, damn it. Jinayong's hands trembled as he covered his left chest. Mom, come out here. Yohaho Mizuho, who had been hiding behind the courtyard door until this moment, finally poked her head out. How is it, Jinayong? Your father and I have always wanted to have a girl. She smiled and hugged the embarrassed Yuan, rubbing her heart against her chest. It's a pity that you and Minato are both typical boys. We haven't even taken out those kimonos that Mom bought us back then, Rumi? Mom, are you kidding me? Yuan is obviously a boy too. Just then, Minato, who had been studying a scroll upstairs, happened to walk down the stairs. Like Jinayong, after a second of hesitation, the little son tilted his head with a smile. Little sister, are you the daughter of Aunt Sato next door? Hey. Aunt Sato, you can rest in peace now. Chapter 82, The Limits of Blood Inheritance. Finally, after a flurry of activity, lunchtime arrived at the Senju household. The normally harmonious and lively mealtime was a bit silent today. From the constipated faces of Shinayu and Minato, to the blushing Tsukijin, to the stifling laughter of Mizuho. Incidentally, Namu had been invited out to dinner by an old comrade. At times like these, Shinayu was always the one to break the silence. He'd been doing this for a long time, a skill he'd mastered. Tsukijin, I'm so sorry, my mom was just being a little overly hospitable. Don't be so reserved, just treat this like your own home. Of course, Tsukijin had already changed back into boy's clothes. Despite Mizuho's constant grumbling about things like what's wrong with a kimono, at Shinayu and Minato's insistence, the young boy finally donned the clothes Shinayu and Minato had worn as children. For some reason, the two young men simultaneously left the room and closed the door while the young boy was getting dressed. Self-respect. But compared to the embarrassment of Shinayu and Minato, the young Yuin was much more generous. Master, you worry too much? Even though the blush on his face had not yet faded, his voice was still clear and calm. Since it is the master's mother's request, Yuin naturally has no reason to refuse. Master. This is also the after effects of that action. After calling Liangai, now it should be called Yu. Anyway, After Shinayu took them back to the Senju ancestral home to live, all the members of the Yu clan maintained a considerable respect for Shinayu, one could even say blind worship. Actually, if you think about it carefully, it's not surprising. After experiencing such a near annihilation incident, Shinayu appeared as a savior and arranged the clan's new life in an orderly manner. Becoming the guard of a Konoha clan like the Senju, no one would complain. From the current situation, it is more accurate to say that the Senju are blessing them rather than protecting them. However, no matter how reasonable it made sense, it was still a little strange for a 13-year-old like Shinayu to be constantly being called master. Of course, he definitely wasn't like the protagonists in so many novels, enjoying the respect while hypocritically saying things like "don't be so polite." Shinayu was a selfish man. If the Yahane clan truly had nothing to offer him, he wouldn't have risked such immense pressure to make them his own. Indeed, he had his eye on this little boy, dressed as a girl by his mother. Yahane Tsuken. Shinayu's plans were set from the moment he laid eyes on this brat. Of course, it wasn't love at first sight. It was because this brat had a unique scent, enough. And certainly not because of a body odor fetish. Ahem, it wasn't chakra sensitivity, but rather that this little guy seemed to possess some talent similar to Shinayu's. Was it wood release? No, that couldn't be. To date, only 2 people had awakened wood release, and both were from the Senju clan. So, besides wood release, does Shinayu have any other talents? Yes, that's right. In the Anbu, where wood release can't be used casually to complete missions, Shinayu possesses another, even more unique ability, time. After that awful game, this is perhaps the only blessing fate has bestowed upon Shinayu. His familiarity with time, his understanding of its control, has made him realize the terrifying power of this ability. Compared to the more material world, at least in this plane, time is an even more absolute force. If his body can truly withstand it, with his unlimited use of time stopping, he would be invincible to any opponent. Even Danzo's intelligence didn't mention the true nature of the Ryoji's bloodstains. In other words, this power is inherently mysterious, untold. But when this little brat grows up and fully masters his power, Shinayu is fully convinced that he will become the Senju clan's most powerful bodyguard. The only problem now is figuring out what Yuan's bloodstains are and how to use them. According to Zuna's information, the bloodstains of the Yaji clan haven't been awakened in many years. Therefore, since long ago, the secret has been passed down orally by each generation of clan leaders. The clan members only know that their clan was once extremely powerful, and that this strength was linked to the bloodstains of the Yaji clan. Obviously, Junzo, as clan leader, had no intention of breaking this rule. But one day, he saw Yuan's pupils glowing purple, and began to plan his escape from Konoha. Purple eyes. Certain organs in the body are highly sensitive to changes in life energy, like the eyes. As a manifestation of life energy, changes in chakra can also affect organs. The most famous example is the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Before chakra is activated, ninjas with a Sharingan are indistinguishable from ordinary people. But once the eyes are awakened, Magatama naturally form in their eyes. Purple pupils are a symbol of the awakening of the bloodstains, and Shinayu quite agrees with this. Then, the only thing left to do was to confirm everything with Yuan himself, but now wasn't the right time. He was still just a child, and Zenayong had even told him not to practice anything related to bloodstains. There was no way Yuan could become combat ready in such a short time. Recruiting Liangai was simply for long-term considerations. Zenayong had no intention of relying on Yuan's power to overcome the current difficulties with the Uchiha clan. So, he still had plenty of time, and there was no need to let Yuan repeat Itachi's tragedy by awakening bloodstains too early. Chapter 83, It Must Be the Wrong Way to Open It. Leaving aside the matter of Moon Silver, for Minato right now, studying the scroll Tsukumo gave him is undoubtedly the most important thing. In the world of ninja, one's own strength is the guarantee of everything. And the direct teaching of Konoha White Fang, such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity would be unjust to miss. However, Minato now understands why Tsukumo said that. What I'm about to teach you today is a technique I created, but I must make it clear that whether or not to practice it is entirely up to you. Why, with White Fang's secret now so clear before our eyes, would people hesitate to pursue this path to greater strength? There's only one answer, and that's what left Minato at a loss. It's simply too dangerous. White Fang's training methods, by chance, took them to extremes, unlike those of ordinary ninjas. Even for the most powerful ninja, The chakra flow through their bodies is limited to a few pathways. Therefore, a serious injury to the spine, arm, or other vital parts of the body would practically spell the end of their ninja career. However, while White Fang was practicing the 8 gates of the ninjutsu, a minor incident occurred. The 8 gates of the ninjutsu refers to the meridian system through which chakra flows, which inhibit and control the flow of chakra within the body: the opening gate, the resting gate, the life gate, the shuang gate, the shut-up gate, the closing gate, the vision gate, the shock gate, and the death gate. These 8 gates limit the amount of chakra in the body. When a ninja uses the 8 gates of the ninjutsu, their body's potential is dramatically tapped, forcing them open and granting immense power. Indeed, the 8 gates of the ninjutsu is a pre-designed technique designed to breach specific gates, but the human body is not limited to these 8 gates. The heart meridian of the hand. This meridian, recognized only in medicine, was the one White Fang accidentally opened during his training. Unlike the 8 gates, White Fang discovered that each of the remaining gates within the body, large and small, did not immediately grant the user exponential strength bonuses. Instead, they actually improved the user's physical fitness. Most importantly, once these gates were opened, they would never close again. Because of this astonishing discovery, White Fang began to open up the meridians within his body one by one. Today, Tsukumo has opened up most of the meridians, including those in his torso. Hence, the legend of Konoha White Fang. But that wasn't the crux of the matter. Minato rubbed his frown. What made him hesitate was the description of the clearing the gates process in the scroll. Every time a gate was broken, one had to endure immense pain, and at the same time, there were enormous risks involved in the process. The chakra's circulation routes were essentially fixed. The reason this ancient and unbroken rule had remained unbroken was precisely because these mainstream circulation routes were the body's naturally widest and most resilient meridians. Only these meridians could withstand the high-speed flow of chakra, allowing the ninja to perform various powerful ninjutsu. However, Tsukumo's training method requires not only the flow of chakra through other smaller meridians, but also the use of this chakra to break through the body's constraints. This is simply like the Arabian Nights. Even the slightest mistake in the process will inevitably cause extensive damage to the meridians, affecting the functioning of the entire body. In other words, it is an absolute gamble, and considering the training time, this gamble is at least 10 years. Shinai wondered if Minato in his previous life had encountered this situation, or if it was precisely because of this huge risk that the second Konoha White Fang had never appeared. But in times like this, the superiority of a buddy, brotherhood is evident. After discovering the problem, Minato had been hesitating whether to practice as written, but he found Shinai without any hesitation to discuss it with him. After all, since he was 5 or 6 years old, in Minato's eyes, his friend had always been an all-knowing, omnipotent school tyrant. And after listening to Minato's explanation, Shinai also began to think about this problem. From a treatment point of view, there should be no problem in restoring the meridians, but I haven't verified this, so I can't be sure. Of course, since coming to the world of Naruto, he hasn't been able to fully confirm whether the so-called meridians of the ninja and the meridians studied by their ancestors are the same thing. Although the name and shape are roughly the same, no one can be sure whether this crappy ninja world will have any strange settings. Can I see Mr. Tsukumo's scroll? Of course, Xianyang was merely observing from a medical perspective, with no intention of stealing his knowledge. Having cultivated a Yangdun physique, his body was already completely different from that of an average person. Even today, Xianyang hadn't used chakra in a way that circulated along the meridians. His body was a chaotic mess, energy escaping from all directions. He wanted to personally examine the scroll simply to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the meridians involved in cultivation. That's perfect. Little son also took the scroll away with an excited look on his face. There are a lot of things in it that I can't understand at all. For example, this, Minato pointed at the record on the scroll in distress. What about the initial practice of the Great Dao and the 9 orifices? The 9 orifices are connected and the spiritual platform is reflected. Xianyang took it almost subconsciously. Huh? Xianyang, how do you know? Wait, let me see the other things first. Someone already had a bad premonition at this moment, but when he took the scroll, he found that he was still too young. The initial practice of the Great Dao is connected to the 9 orifices. The 9 orifices are connected and the spiritual platform is reflected. First rush out from the Yonkun point on the soles of the feet, and the Yakuin point will break through as fast as the wind. Xianyang slapped himself in the face. Damn it. Shouldn't this be the general outline of the Kwanzaa Sect's introductory mental method? It must be the way I opened it. Damn it. Did you, Mr. Tsukumo, also travel from the Celestial Empire? And it's from the Song Dynasty. Finally, he swallowed back the blood that was rushing to his throat, and looked at Minato with a heavy expression of internal injury. Don't worry, you practice well, I will watch over you, and I will help you with the treatment if anything goes wrong. P.S. Tsukumo is certainly not a time traveler, you guys. Just think of it as the subtitle team being naughty. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 84, A Woman's Struggle. After double-checking the details, Minato began practicing the Hatake Ryu bodybuilding method. Initially, due to his cautiousness, his breakthroughs were slow, but he didn't suffer any unexpected damage. However, as his practice progressed, he finally made a mistake while breaking through the first gate. The damage wasn't significant, but if left untreated, the subsequent chakra would have caused even greater damage. At that moment, vital energy entered Minato's body, repairing everything before the meridians completely collapsed. It seemed to be going even better than expected. Guided by this successful attempt, Minato gradually accelerated his pace of breakthroughs. By sunset, their achievements were truly astonishing. Over a third of the first auxiliary meridian had been opened. At this rate, in just 3 months, Minato would reach Tsukumo's current level. Of course, this is just an ideal speed. As the meridians become more complex, the difficulty of breaking through will increase exponentially. And most importantly, neither Minato nor Shinayu can stay together to practice all day. They are ninjas, and missions and battles are the main theme of their lives. But even if we look at it this way, at most in 7 or 8 years, Konoha will have another sharp tooth. You know, even by that time, Minato will be less than 20 years old, but compared to Tsukumo at the same age, he not only has terrifying body training methods, but also unpredictable space ninjutsu, and sealing techniques from the Senjou Uzumaki. Shinayu can fully imagine how the legend of Minato will spread in the ninja world when the Third World War begins. The war was nearly over, leaving Konoha with only the moral responsibility of maintaining the security of the Land of Rain, a responsibility that fell squarely on the shoulders of the Konoha Anbu and the Senju Princess Tsunade. Sensing the surroundings gradually calming down, Uchiha finally emerged from his cover. Indeed, no one could have anticipated that, with the Iwagakure ninja already facing a massive defeat, the remaining exiles within the Land of Rain would actually organize such a siege against Konoha. Including Tsunade and Captain Kato Dan, Konoha's contingent consisted of only 13 men. While the attackers this time lacked masters of Henzo's caliber, the Iwagakure nin, including the Jounin, numbered over 50. This sheer numerical disadvantage, coupled with calculated and unintended consequences, meant Konoha suffered horrific losses in the first encounter. Having fled, only 7 Konoha ninja remained available. The perceptive Anbu were dead. Rather, to fulfill their mission of protecting Princess Uchiha, the Anbu now consisted of only Uchiha and another, slightly younger member. Can she survive this time? There were no signs of an enemy encirclement outside, but letting down our guard here would be tantamount to courting death. A wry smile crossed her face beneath the mask. I'm afraid you'll be too late to save me now, right? The thought barely crossed her mind before she dismissed it. What a joke. Why did she join the Anbu? Because of the Uchiha clan? No kidding, she had no regard for that aloof clan. Was it out of loyalty to the village? No, not really. Konoha hadn't offered her any help either, not even a single ninjutsu scroll. She joined the Anbu simply because it offered an opportunity. A chance to become stronger. For Konoha's most secretive intelligence, the Uchiha would open up all their resources to her, simply to help her gain a foothold within the Anbu. And to monitor the Uchiha clan's every move, Konoha would provide them with every possible advantage, ready to guard against the hidden hand behind the powerful Konoha clan. This was their chance to become stronger. Although the result of doing so was close surveillance from both sides, neither wanted this pawn to ultimately fall to the other side. The war taught Wasi a lesson, only by being strong enough could one pursue their dreams. As a girl, she simply wanted to live with that idiot, But for the simple future, she had to risk everything. She had to become strong enough to ignore the Uchiha's influence, even strong enough to have the entire Uchiha clan prostrate at her feet. Only then could she do as she pleased. Boom! The battlefield, long silent, erupted into a frenzy. As expected, the Iwagakure ninja had already grasped their position. The torrential flood pouring down from afar was the Iwagakure ninja's grave for Konoha's ninjas. Move, Dan gave the order, and everyone evacuated simultaneously. At the same time, countless detonating tags on both sides of the riverbank began to emit their own light. Wasi said nothing, simply tightening his grip on the kunai. "Senior, are we going to die here this time?" Another masked kid was right next to Eagle. Judging from his voice, he was basically a child who hadn't grown up yet. "If you want to die, go ahead." Chapter 85, Opportunity. In the 37th year of Konoha, the Second Shinobi World War officially ended. However, 2 weeks before that, Konoha suffered a devastating loss. Tsunade, the princess of Konoha and one of the three ninjas, fled. The direct trigger for this incident was the mission to protect the Land of Rain. The Second Shinobi World War, after claiming Tsunade's biological brother, Norki, also claimed her lover, Kato Dan. The latter was undoubtedly a famous and powerful ninja of Konoha, but in this surprise attack by the Iwagakure, in order to cover the retreat of others, the young Dan gave his life. Of the 15-man team sent by Konoha, only 6 survived in the end. It was precisely because of this that Konoha, which was originally immersed in the joy of victory in the war, was shrouded in a layer of faint sadness. Compared with before the war, Konoha has lost too many outstanding ninjas, and now, Jiraiya has not returned yet, and Senju Tsunade has left sadly. Even though there are still war factions like Danzo within Konoha who are dissatisfied with the peace treaty, the war has finally come to an end. As for Shinryu, as the captain of the route department, he simply did not have much time to enjoy this joy, and since under the influence of Danzo, he began to carefully consider establishing a power completely in his own hands, the young Jonin boldly began to look for his own confidence within the route. This is undoubtedly very difficult. The route was fundamentally different from other Anbu, for it was inherently a place of absolute obedience and dominance. Danzo had planted special seals on all route members, save Shinryu, and these life-threatening seals were concentrated in Danzo's hands. Clearly, while the elder was very tolerant of Shinryu, his faith in the law of the jungle meant he lacked the warmth Sarutobi showed toward his juniors. 10 or 20 years from now, the entirety of Konoha's route would likely be under the control of Senju Shinryu. But to accomplish this, Danzo needed Shinryu to defeat him head-on. Honorable or dishonorable outcomes were irrelevant. This was Danzo's way of ninja. Even if he chose his successor, he must ensure the succession of root power through the exchange of blood and iron. Of course, these matters were still early, so they would be left aside for now. For now, Danzo knew Shinryu had more important matters to attend to. Thus, in response to his request to be excused from missions within the next 10 days, Danzo granted him a 5-day leave. Aha! For this, Shinryu just cursed in his heart, "Old man." Then he started to plan on his own. Unconsciously, Shinryu had become accustomed to Danzo's Spartan way of education. It can be said that on the road of ninja, it was Jiraiya who enlightened him, and it was Hatake Tsukumo who led him to maturity, but the one who really changed him was the stern old man in front of him, Shimura Danzo. Danzo never taught him anything directly, but recently, even Shinryu himself could realize that some of his behavior styles have been getting closer and closer to this gloomy big villain. He suddenly thought of Minato. If Minato succeeded the Hokage and became the Fourth Hokage in the future, would he and Minato be like the current Sandaime and Danzo? He recalled Danzo's words before his death in the manga, "You are the leaves bathed in sunlight, and I am the roots in darkness." No. Shaking his head, Shinryu immediately discarded the thought. He had never considered defeating, or even outmaneuvering Minato. Or perhaps he would be a more competent root than Danzo. He looked up, and the Senju clan's oldest garrison, nestled in the heart of Konoha, finally appeared before him. The tall, ornate archway hinted at the place where the legendary figure who founded Hokage once resided. It was a shame, Tsukima had long since turned to dust, and Princess Tsunade, once believed to be the one who had revived the Senju clan, had just left Konoha. But the Sage of Six Paths still favored Konoha and the Senju clan. 13 years ago, a child named Senju Shinryu was born. For the Senju, who had long since abandoned the concept of a strict clan, the addition of such a new member to the family did not attract their attention at all. until about 10 years later. This child, who had been ignored by everyone, unexpectedly awakened the wood release, which symbolizes the extreme power of the Senju. And today, 3 years later, this child has finally arrived here, to the place where the Senju started. The gate opened, and all the clan members stood respectfully on both sides. They solemnly closed their eyes, lowered their heads, and greeted the 13-year-old boy. Senju Shinayu, from the moment he awakened the wood release, he was destined to become the pillar of the Senju's rise again. However, Tsunade's departure greatly accelerated this time. Yes, there is no such thing as despicable or noble. Whether you could say he was taking advantage of a difficult situation to take over the Senju clan, or that he was providing timely assistance to restore the Senju clan's glory. From today on, Senju Shinayu became the leader of the Senju clan, a powerful timber clan that had long since fallen into disarray, finally standing at the forefront of the times. Starting tomorrow, try to gather as many of the clan members as possible. Shinayu issued his first order as clan leader. Regardless of their origins, the Senju clan needs fresh blood now. Yes, these simple words, however, resonated deeply in the hearts of all the clan members. They all knew this might be the beginning of restoring the Senju clan's glory. And Shinayu, giving the orders, silently clenched his fists. From here on, he would possess a force truly his own. Though the road ahead held many obstacles. Of course, he wasn't omniscient and didn't realize that Tsunade's escape, which he saw as an opportunity, was also an opportunity for Eagle. Chapter 86, Wet and Slippery. In a life or death crisis, those with potential will naturally make breakthroughs. Whether it's Wasabi or the younger boy, those who survived the battle have all grown in their own ways. But for Shinayu, who focuses on the bigger picture, improving his own strength, isn't a big deal. The real challenge is how to improve the strength of the entire Senju clan. In the original story, apart from Princess Tsunade, there seems to be no trace of the Senju clan in Konoha anymore. Where did they go? In this life, Shinayu, a member of the Senju clan, had never seen the so-called Forest Senju due to the clan's separation. But when he realized he would soon take over as clan leader, he silently prayed. Heaven, please give me a few more Jonin. Indeed, expecting the current Senju clan to produce a cage-level Jonin besides Tsunade is unrealistic. With just 20 or 30 Jonin, Shinayu would be satisfied. Ahem. What? Are 20 or 30 a lot? You have to know that as a root unit leader, Shinayu can now call upon over 20 root Jonin. As for just how many Jonin there are within the root, that's a question only old Danzo knows for sure. It's not just the root itself. In fact, the Anbu under the Hokage's control may have a slightly smaller number of Jonin than the root, but they're definitely no less elite. Besides these individuals, Sarutobi and Danzo each have the support of a number of clans. Well, even if we don't talk about these two Konoha's supremely powerful figures, let's just look at the Uchiha clan. While the Uchiha clan, known as the Konoha's most powerful blood speeders, haven't yet produced a single cage-level Jonin, including the great elder Uchiha Kagami, the number of elite Jonin in the entire Uchiha clan is staggeringly high. While being able to disregard Jinjutsu would significantly reduce the threat posed by these Sharingan-savvy individuals, where would Shinayu find so many ninjas who aren't afraid of Jinjutsu? So, his only hope was that meeting the deceased Senju would give him a little surprise. But, what's the saying, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. A middle-aged man named Senju Oyuki told him that, including him and Shinayu's father, Nanmu, there were only 7 active Jonin in the Senju clan, and all of them were over 37 years old. 37 years old. For a cannon fodder ninja, that was considered advanced age. Even for a Jonin, at this stage, they were already at the peak of their ninja career, let alone reaching a higher level. Even maintaining their form was extremely difficult. With all that, how could Shinayu possibly challenge Makuai, or suppress the ambitious Uchiha? No, he couldn't give up just like that. Compared to him, Washi's situation must be even more difficult. If even he couldn't make a breakthrough, was there any reason to hope for Washi? Absolutely not. Deep down, Shinayu was a rather chauvinistic man. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter, how could he possibly face Eagle? It was decided. The Senju clan's current situation simply couldn't be fixed quickly. Just like Uian, if Shinayu relied on their own strength, it would likely take at least 10 years. So how could he bridge this gap in the shortest possible time? He undoubtedly needed external help. The mission Danzo had given him was the perfect opportunity. While recruiting the blood-stained families left behind from the war, Shinayu could easily win them over to his side immediately, though ultimately, it wasn't his own clan's power, and in the short term, there was nothing he could do about it. Furthermore, while the Senju clan had gradually lost political influence within Konoha, its prestige was undoubtedly comparable to that of any other major clan, and factions within the village, both large and small, were increasingly siding with their side. With the war just over, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Shinayu, and for the Senju clan. Even Zenyaong has a more extreme plan. If he can't get living masters, then he might as well consider those who are already dead. However, Zenyaong is really not interested in those wet and slippery things. With this in mind, Zenyaong first orders Uzi, as the clan leader, to select talented younger generations in the clan and open up the information and ninjutsu resources that have been treasured for generations to them. On the other hand, he also orders the ninjas who are on missions outside to pay attention to gathering the orphans of the Uzumaki clan. And Zenyaong himself. He has decided to visit someone. If he was not too afraid of the other party because of his yankton physique, he thinks he would never be willing to approach this guy in his life. Even if theoretically, this guy is someone who is listed as one of the three ninjas together with his cousin and master, Orochimaru. The only impression left on people is that of a gloomy young man who keeps running between the laboratory and the slaughterhouse, and no normal person would easily approach him. One of the most important reasons why Shinayu chose to visit this newly promoted cage-level powerhouse at this time was that he learned that Orochimaru had not yet established contact with Danzo. On the contrary, some of his experiments were being closely watched by the Root, and there was no possibility of any operation. Perhaps in the original timeline, the greatest scientist in the history of the ninja world would soon surrender to Danzo, but now, Shinayu decided to give him another choice. That's right, when Shinayu was checking the records of the Senju clan one time, he found several interesting records. Judging from the signature, it should be the younger brother of the Shogun, the second Hokage, Senju Kirima. And what was recorded on those manuscripts seemed to be an unfinished technique called immortal reincarnation. Obviously, the careless second Hokage did not put these materials into the completed Book of Ninja, but chose to seal it in the scroll warehouse of the Senju family. This is what Shinayu called extreme measures. He no longer has time to train powerful helpers, but he has absolute confidence in his own strength. He can almost feel that within 2 or 3 years, he will definitely be able to reach the level of an ordinary cage. By that time, he, who possesses the wood release and time release, will be the nightmare of many people. Merciful and dark Mother Earth. May the souls of those powerful people in the forbidden land of the Senju clan be forever safe. P.S. Red Tea is chasing so closely. It's a pity that this old man has not seen the tail of the tyrant yet. Everyone, I say, to keep the second place. Chapter 87, If I don't complain, I'll die. Standing at the door of Orochimaru's house, Zenyaong hesitated again. What attitude should he adopt later? Should he lower his posture a little? No, cooperating with a person like Orochimaru is inherently dangerous. If he doesn't protect his legal rights from the beginning, he will really have to cry on the test bench in the future. Then, just be tough. No. He is one of the three ninjas after all, especially since the other two are not here yet, and he has a famous teacher like the Third Hokage. Whether in terms of seniority or hard power, Zenyaong is no match for the other party now. Besides, he came here to discuss cooperation. If things get unpleasant right from the start, he will almost have no room for recovery in front of a proud person like Orochimaru. Or, just treat it as a business negotiation? That wasn't right. Strictly speaking, Shinayoung's purpose for coming here today wasn't legal. What should I do? I won't pay you even if you stand at the door, a slightly hoarse voice rang out from the dark room. Peeking through the half-open door, he saw a long corridor. What psychopath would live in such a dark, narrow place with direct sunlight? And, Uncle Snake, as a snake, do you have to spray venom everywhere? At this point, Shinayoung had adjusted his mindset. He wasn't here to steal. To put it bluntly, for Orochimaru, who is in a difficult situation being targeted by Danzo, Shinayoung was definitely his benefactor. Not the kind from the Imperial Palace. Walking forward. This corridor was incredibly long. And if Shinayoung was right, he should be walking down a slope. In other words, your house was actually the entrance to the basement, right? Ever since entering this place, Shinayoung has been feeling uneasy. Knowing wood release doesn't mean he needs photosynthesis, but compared to the outside world, this place, permeated with a scent of formaldehyde, is unlikely to appeal to anyone. The passage still has no end in sight. By now, Shinayong can't help but wonder if Orochimaru is the son of some noble family. Compared to this house and laboratory, the living space of Shinayong's own home is simply too small. And, as a time traveler, this is all too clear to him. Orochimaru has more than just one laboratory. Damn it. This is the exploiting class. This is the class enemy. Where are you going? A big door that Shinayong had just passed by suddenly opened, and the strange man with white skin was half sticking out of it. Shinayong, who had been absent-minded, did not release his perception of the surroundings. After all, according to the plots shown on TV, the final boss should. Or do you think I will be like the villains in those cartoons that deceive children, waiting for you at the end of the corridor? The sound like the friction of sandpaper was not pleasant to begin with, coupled with a playful expression, and the complaint that made Shinayong unable to fight back. Shinayong suppressed the anger in his heart. As the patriarch of the Senju clan, he did not come here today to quarrel with Uncle Snake. That's right, not for a fight, not for a fight, not for a fight. After a tenth of a second of self-hypnosis, Shinayong finally calmed down. Oddly enough, when he'd first thought about meeting Orochimaru, Shinayong had been a bit apprehensive, but after actually meeting him, he actually felt the urge to charge up and beat him up. If it weren't for his obvious lack of strength. Can we talk now? Shinayong practically uttered these words through gritted teeth. Aha, as expected of the leader of the Senju clan, your energy cultivation is top-notch, Orochimaru emphasized the word Senju clan. Clearly, the name of this declining clan reminded him of one of his comrades, the wood industry princess Tsunade. At the same time, he made way for Shinayong to enter. But before Shinayong could even utter the words, "You're too kind," he nearly choked to death on Orochimaru's next words. "Tisk tisk, but you came here without sending anyone or a visiting card. You're just a kid after all." "Yes. I was rude." Shinayong quickly found a seat after entering the lab. Then, he released his anger by crushing the handles of a table and chair. Of course, even then, his voice still had a subtle tremor. "Ha," Orochimaru chuckled, taking a seat across from Shinayong. "So, Senju Shinayu, why did you come to see me today? Since you already know me to this extent, you are asking even though you already know the answer." The meaningless conversation continued until now, and they were finally going to talk about some practical issues. Shinayu's reaction finally made Orochimaru frown. From the moment he entered the door, Orochimaru probably understood the other party's intentions. Although he didn't know that Shinayu's ultimate goal was to check and balance the Uchiha, for him, Shinai took advantage of this time to recruit the Senju's old subordinates, which was the biggest symbol of his ambition. What was important was not how much strength the Senju clan had left, but the name Senju. This was also the reason why the Senju clan had never been swallowed up by other big clans, simply because of the deterrent effect of these two words themselves. In Konoha, daring to touch these two words is practically a provocation to the Hokage clan. But Shinayu's situation is different. As a true member of the Senju clan, his actions are understandable. Compared to his activeness on the battlefield, this decision has tilted Orochimaru's favor towards Shinayu over the two current Senju leaders. Tsunade-sama has no such ambition or judgment, despite her considerable skill on the battlefield. So, why would the ambitious Senju Shinayu approach him now? Considering the other party's identity as a root member, the answer becomes clear. So, from the beginning until now, all of Orochimaru's unusual behavior has been a test of Shinayu, setting the stage for the upcoming negotiations. Isn't it true that negotiating with an opponent who has lost his composure always yields greater benefits? But Shinayu's reaction was unexpected. "I underestimated you." Shinayu smiled faintly, but remained silent. "Well, let's get down to business." Half an hour later, the game of chess between the two sides concluded, and the result was satisfactory to both of them. Orochimaru received a certain degree of protection from Shinayu, as well as the research materials of the Senju clan, including, of course, the all-important immortal reincarnation. Shinayu, on the other hand, received Orochimaru's support in domestic affairs, as well as ownership of the complete version of immortal reincarnation. Professional matters should indeed be left to the professionals, except... Bang! Shinayu, having just walked out of Orochimaru's house, unceremoniously pushed the door down. After venting his anger, he breathed a sigh of relief and put on a smile again. "Damn Orochimaru! Are you going to die if you don't complain?" Chapter 88, Spiritual Beast. For a ninja, demonstrating their comprehensive qualities requires actual combat. However, compared to the complexities of actual combat, the combat prowess of a single individual is affected by coordination and the fluctuating skills of their teammates. This is why, even for a profession known for its shadowy nature, ninjas rely on the support of their comrades. In the treacherous ninja world, besides humans, other creatures, through specialized means, can aid ninjas and play a decisive role in battle. This is exemplified by the Sannin, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru. Aside from a certain reptile mastering over 1,000 mainstream ninjutsu, are not well suited for large-scale combat. Yet, despite this, they have established a reputation in the chaotic battlefield. Perhaps a key factor in this is the powerful summoning beasts, the summoning jutsu. By signing a contract with a unique animal, a special channel is created between the two parties. Within the constraints of this channel and its rules, when the user consumes a certain amount of chakra, they can summon a pre-contracted summoned beast from another dimension, allowing these exotic animal companions to assist the ninja in battle at any time. This is a very convenient and powerful combat technique. According to Shinayu's original plan, he intended to obtain the summoning scroll of the Sage Frog clan from Jiraiya, thereby establishing a connection with the giant toads of Mount Myaboku. However, the current situation seems to require more powerful helpers. While the Sage mode that can be achieved through training through the Toad Sage trial is indeed extremely powerful, this extremely time-consuming training is undoubtedly a mirage for Shinayu at this point. He needs to be quick, to become powerful as quickly as possible. In short, Shinayu's goal is to find a summoned beast that is powerful, has a domineering appearance, and a docile personality, and preferably one that is naturally loyal. However, judging by his route investigations, the chances of finding such an ideal summoning beast were no more than a collision between Mars and Earth. Standing before him lay the Nine Tails, summoned decades ago by Uchiha Madara, and a host of other, less powerful creatures. Life, in its absurd way, once again delivered this cruel answer to his question. Nothing comes easy. To obtain a powerful summoning beast, you either have to luck out and find a long-lost contract scroll, or you must force the submission of powerful beings through a desperate battle. The problem was, Jinyu didn't even know where those legendary monsters were, let alone how to subdue them. Even if Jinyu did encounter one, anyone with abilities that satisfied him would likely easily defeat him, and in that case, he'd likely become a prey to the monsters. These seemed contradictory, but for Jinyu, they weren't infallible. He had long ago begun planning his own plan to increase his power, and summoning beasts were a key component. To be precise, Shinyu had some clues about the summoning beasts, but he couldn't confirm them yet. After all, such things couldn't be confirmed to exist. So, while completing his missions with a root and improving his strength, he also began to search the ninja world for secrets about that country, trying to find a clear clue among these tangled records. And a year after the war ended, Shinyu's persistent research finally paid off. In the swamp country, near the legendary cave where the monster was sealed, some strange events have occurred one after another in recent years, like a ninja who suddenly went crazy, or trees, flowers and plants that withered for no reason, and according to this generation's terrible prophecy, people have begun to gradually move away from the shrine. At present, this shrine that is said to hold the fate of the world in its hands has only the last 4 guardian tribes left. That's right, for Hanayong, what he has always been interested in is this monster that is said to have almost destroyed the world. Although it is only a legend that existed in the samurai era, few people believe it now. However, for the high-level ninjas, they still pay considerable attention to that area. The terrifying power it emanated from it made it hard to believe that this was all just nonsense from beginning to end. The Wulian, or, perhaps, the Yamada no Orochi. Its strength rivaled that of ordinary tailed beasts, its strange and unique chakra control method, and even its powerful soul and immortal body. All of these were reasons why Shinyu chose it as his target, but that wasn't the most important thing. The ninja world actually possessed many other amazing and powerful creatures, but for Shinyu, there were only a few he could truly subdue and bring into his power. In this situation, the Wulian, once sealed by the Shrine Maiden of the Demon Kingdom, seemed the perfect fit. If he could harness the Shrine Maiden's power, using the wood release technique as a foundation, Shinyu was confident that, as long as he encountered no significant resistance during the technique, the Tree Realm General could completely control the powerful tailed beast. Perhaps even with the powerful chakra released by the tailed beast, the wood release cage would become even stronger. That's right, the key was whether the Shrine Maiden would cooperate. So, it was decided. The scroll of true courage lay before him, along with a request for a mission in the Demon Kingdom regarding civil unrest. This was the best excuse he could find. To become even stronger, he decided to personally travel to the Demon Kingdom. He wanted to personally meet the incredibly powerful Marco from the movie. Chapter 89, The Most Appropriate Reason. Ninja Technique, The Art of Erasing Faces. On a cold test bench, a certain Iwagakure, ambushed by the root, had long since expired. Without a trace of blood, and unable to perform any powerful escape techniques, he had been nothing more than a Shinin in his lifetime. And now, his corpse was being exploited by Orochimaru for its surplus value. Indeed, nearly a month had passed since Shinayu and Orochimaru signed the cooperation agreement. Aside from missions and family reunions, Shinayu had spent most of his time in Orochimaru's laboratory. Of course, this was accomplished through the use of wood release clones, as this type of cooperation couldn't be made public for the time being. The art of erasing faces. This technique, developed by Orochimaru to permanently alter one's appearance and thereby invade enemy facilities, was ultimately used solely by him to alter his own altered appearance. But on the other hand, the original function of this technique is very important to Shinayu, who is still in its infancy. Senju is like every big family. In addition to Shinayu, who is exposed to everyone, there must also be people who hide in the dark and work for Shinayu. For them, this kind of auxiliary ninjutsu can sometimes have a very amazing effect. In the past month, Shinayu has discovered quite a few ninjutsu similar to the face erasing technique. It must be said that Orochimaru is really a natural ninjutsu genius. At the age of more than 20, he has already developed hundreds of ninjutsu, and these do not include the illegal forbidden techniques. Wow, Shinayu-kun is making great progress. Compared to Shinayong's amazement, Orochimaru observes the former's progress every day while conducting experiments. He is only practicing with a wood release clone, but in the past few days, Shinayong has been digesting these difficult and obscure knowledge at the rate of 3 to 4 ninjutsu a day. This is not just a genius. When the clone comes into contact, huge amounts of knowledge and information rush into the original body's mind in an instant. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably have gone crazy, right? It can be said that the relationship between the two is no longer as tense as it was that day. After all, although they have their own goals, their current interests are all the same. In the face of the intricate situation within Konoha, they don't need to destroy the walls of their own city. Or rather, this simple alliance is not yet strong enough to ignore the threats of other forces and start fighting among themselves. You have time to care about me? You might as well worry more about your own experiments. Orochimaru smiled in an ambiguous way. He stretched out his long tongue and licked his lips. Has the soft transformation begun? Yes, now that Shinayu-kun reminded me of this, I suddenly remembered that the recent experimental subjects are almost used up again. That's right, this is why Orochimaru's experiments are banned. His live experiments need to be carried out on human bodies. I'm going out for a while and will be back in about half a month. No, Orochimaru licked his lips excitedly. I hope that Shinayu-kun can get me a certificate to leave the village. I have something I want to confirm. One of the 3 ninjas also needs a certificate to leave the village. Originally, Shinayu was the one who was doing the task of finding living people. But since Orochimaru wanted to do it himself, Shinayu certainly didn't care. But, how could a ninja of this level still need a certificate to leave the village? Didn't you see that Jiraiya and Tsunade could just leave whenever they wanted? Wait, could it be that? Shinayu stared at the cold-blooded snake with a serious look. Of course, you can't use the identity of Orochimaru. I knew it. Shinayu slapped himself in the face. This guy is really going to cause trouble for himself. Even if Shinayu is now a squad leader of the root, it will take a lot of effort to fabricate such a certificate out of thin air. Besides, this kind of small action done under Danzo's nose is really risky. If he accidentally exposes his current cooperative relationship with Orochimaru, I believe that it will definitely not be a pleasant thing. At least, he, the young patriarch of the Senju clan, will become more ambitious in the eyes of Konoha's top leaders. Now is not the time to conflict with these powerful families. He held his brow in a headache, while Orochimaru continued his work quietly without mentioning the matter again. This is how it is between allies. The requirements have been put forward, and as for the part beyond the covenant, whether to execute or not depends entirely on the consciousness of each other. But this exchange also affects the stability of the covenant. Wait? If he is still alive, of course it is impossible to create a person out of thin air, so, what if this guy died because of the mission? Xianyang's eyes lit up. It just so happened that he had been thinking about going to the land of demons these days. I think I found the most appropriate reason. The corners of his mouth finally curled up slightly. Although this little trick was not presentable after all, for his own benefit, Xianyang didn't mind getting a little bloody. The ground cracked open, and a silent wooden bar instantly pierced his chest. Before he could even move, the powerful absorption force transformed him into a mummy. Tisk tisk, Shinaju-kun is really ruthless to his men, Orochimaru said teasingly. Inured to this, Shinaju simply rolled his eyes and hurriedly said, "You'd better hurry up and write the face. I need to take this guy back later." Understood. That was Shinaju's plan. Using a mercenary method, he would directly send Konoha a mission to investigate the unusual situation around the swamp country. Almost immediately, Shinaju would team up with Orochimaru to kill the spy Danzo had been placing with him. Root squad leaders had the authority to eliminate spies without prior approval. Although this would undoubtedly displease Danzo, for the sake of that thing, Shinaju decided to take the risk. The rest of the story is simple. Shinaju will take the dead Root with him, claiming he's very interested in the mission and needs to deal with the accidental killing incident. Finally, after the mission is completed, all he has to do is write the ninja's name on the list of dead. The only difference is that the dead ninja will be replaced by Orochimaru. Chapter 90, I think I got the era wrong. Then let's break up here. Ahem, breaking up here certainly meant parting ways. After all, Shinaju and Orochimaru's future paths were completely different. The gloomy and cold-blooded Lord Orochimaru seemed to have a special fondness for the land of rice. This trip was clearly not just about searching for experimental targets. To Shinaju, familiar with the plot of Naruto, it seemed that the Sound Village that Orochimaru would establish would be funded by a certain nation. Well, these matters were too far off yet, and Shinaju didn't have the time to worry about them. For him, the immediate task was to go to the land of demons and thoroughly investigate the intelligence on the demons. Of course, if possible, he also wanted to enlist the help of the Miko and transform them into his own summoning beasts. As his Yangtun physique improved, sleep gradually became unnecessary for Shinaju. Furthermore, driven to reach his destination in the land of demons as quickly as possible, Shinaju made few stops along the way. At noon on the third day, he finally reached his destination, surging forward at full speed. Now, the rest of the task was entirely up to him. To be frank, this wasn't the land of demons rushing to Konoha for reinforcements, quite the opposite. It was Shinaju, a Konoha ninja with ulterior motives, who had come to him. In such a situation, even a polite invitation wouldn't likely yield the information he sought. Therefore, Shinaju, newly arrived in his noble land, decided to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Gathering intelligence on his own was the most reliable path. As he spoke of this, Shinaju wept bitterly. I once thought that as long as I teamed up with Tsukumo-sensei, a maxed-out, God-equipped character, I'd be able to live a life of free reign, exploiting the locals and letting my dogs bite people. I mean, I'd achieve great things and reach the pinnacle of my life. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. That awful mission behind enemy lines nearly cost Shinaju his life, and he'd had enough of that isolated and helpless existence. After he'd finally recovered from his injuries, that heartless old man, Danzo, had him sent to the front lines in the land of rain with a piece of paperwork. Yep, another awful guerrilla mission. All in all, Shinaju had spent far more time in enemy territory than in his own camp. In the end, he even accidentally ran into the demigod Hanzo. How incredibly lucky was that? Luckily, he was incredibly strong, and managed to survive even this near-death situation. He'd had a couple of weeds, but that was nothing compared to losing his life. Originally, Shinaju had thought that the war was almost over, and his dangerous missions would soon be over. But as luck would have it, after the war, he was unexpectedly dragged into the route by that old man, Danzo. Oh, and I have to mention that because the route is a special unit, they aren't paid per mission like regular ninjas, but instead receive a monthly stipend. The problem is, compared to the dangerous missions Shinaju undertakes, this salary is a drop in the bucket. And on top of that, as the captain of the route, Shinaju's duties are of course shady. Damn it. There's no such thing as bullying men and women, their jobs can be summed up in one word, killing. This time, not to mention being in enemy territory, Even in their own lair, they have to hide from everyone. Just who did they offend? And precisely because of Shinayu's dismal resume, he's developed a knack for gathering intelligence at such a young age. This skill has undoubtedly been honed through countless trials and tribulations, and Shinai has definitely mastered it. Ahem. However, in order to save time, Xianyang would occasionally use some extreme measures. The land of demons is one of the few countries in the world that still relies on samurai as its main combat force. In other words, if it weren't for the existence of the Shrine Maiden, this originally small country would have been annexed by the surrounding countries long ago. In the original work, the reason why so many people wanted to kill the Shrine Maiden before the resurrection of the ghost was obviously not as simple as the army of the dead. And in this country where ninjas are scarce, the defense against ninjas, or ninjutsu, is also surprisingly low. Xianyang's initial method was very simple. He just needed to use transformation techniques to sneak into the nearby taverns, tea houses and the like, and ask a few questions, and he would naturally be able to grasp the most basic information about the demon country. Of course, relying solely on this was not enough. When it came to the Shrine Maidens, ordinary people would either refuse to talk about them at all, or simply knew nothing about them. In this situation, Xianyang finally accepted his fate after holding a samurai hostage. The demon country lacked high-end combat power, and even its secrets were only in the hands of a very small number of people. Xianyang's original plan was to understand the situation in advance so that he could gain the upper hands in the subsequent negotiations, but from the current situation, well, at least the other party didn't understand him either. After dutifully submitting his invitation, Shinayang was summoned by the Shrine Maiden a day later. The only thing Shinayang knew about this mysterious Shrine Maiden was that her name was Miroku, and that she was only 12 years old. For some reason, upon learning this, Shinayang felt like he'd missed something. "Excuse me," Shinayang said, kneeling solemnly before the Shrine Maiden. "I'm Senju Shinayang, from Konoha village. I've come here because I'm curious about a legend from your country." Knowing very little about the Shrine Maiden, Shinayang didn't mince words and simply stated his purpose. "You won't get what you want here." While not quite solemn and sacred, after all, she hadn't completely shed her childish voice, Miroku's voice did have a certain ethereal quality that befitted a Shrine Maiden. Of course, what Shinayang cared about most was what she said. Aren't Shrine Maidens supposed to only predict events related to their own death? Could they even predict the purpose of my visit? "I can only see fragments," Miroku's voice echoed again, and this time, Shinayang almost stood up subconsciously. Is this mind reading? It's not that Shinayang was overly alarmed, it's just that he has too many secrets that no one can see through. "Ha," the little girl chuckled softly, covering her mouth with her hand. Because of the gauze curtain, Shinayang couldn't see her expression clearly. "Don't worry, how could she know all this? You just put that sentence on your face. Is this considered a resemblance?" Shinayang shook his head with a wry smile and sat down again. At the same time, he couldn't help but complain in his heart. Is it that the curtain is designed so that those outside can't see in, but those inside can see out? Since the Miko already knows my purpose, then I will speak frankly. Having already come here, Shinayang certainly couldn't waste this opportunity. Returning empty-handed was not his character. Moreover, strengthening his own strength through the ghosts was the beginning of his next plan. "I hope to help you completely solve the problem regarding the body of Wang Lian. In exchange, I also hope that the kingdom of demons can hand over this body that has no soul and only has animal nature to deal with to me." At this moment, Xianyang's proposal finally silenced the people behind the curtain. After all, even for the Shrine Maiden, this matter is of great importance. "I admire your courage. However, even if I want to agree to you, there is no way to pull the soul of Wang Lian out of his body." A light sigh expressed the helplessness of the Shrine Maiden, but it made Shinayang completely freeze. "Damn it. I actually forgot the most important point. Miroku should be Shian's mother. If she hadn't sacrificed her life to separate the soul and body of Wu Lian and sealed it, how could Shinayang have the opportunity to face an incomplete Wu Lian? Wait, that is to say, the altar currently located in the swamp country is not a seal as the outside world believes, it's just a simple barrier, and the monsters are inside it." Having said that, Xianyang is trying hard to restrain the urge to bang his head on the ground. After all, he is in front of the witch of the ghost country, and it is too embarrassing to do so. However, the slightly twitching corners of his mouth still reveal his emotions. "Damn it. I got the era wrong. P.S. This book has been signed with a bookstore. Won't you guys give some rewards to celebrate? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 91, The Legendary Suction Method. Normally, when a man pursues a woman, he shouldn't push her too hard. Tactics like playing hard to get have long been recorded in classics by our ancestors and passed down to later generations. Of course, it is not ruled out that sometimes it is necessary to appropriately use tactics like forcing someone to have sex. It's not a short distance from Konoha to the land of demons. With such a long distance, it was difficult for Shinayong to find an excuse to come here, and it was obviously not his style to return empty-handed. Since we're already here, Shinayong might as well just go for it. Ahem, what I mean is, why not just go to the altar in the swamp country and take a good look? Originally, after learning that the soul of the Wulian was not separated from its body, Shinayong no longer planned to subdue the other party as a summoning beast. Although he even brought the contract scroll, it is still too difficult for him to subdue a monster that may be comparable to the tailed beast with his current strength. In this case, Shinayong naturally put his mind on other things. According to the original work, whether it is the Mako or the Wulian, the energy they use is different from ordinary chakra, but since Naruto can use Shin's power to release the Rasengan, it means that this energy can, in a certain sense, complement chakra. If he can obtain some flesh and blood of the Wulian. You know, Shinayong now has a crazy scientist like Orochimaru as his ally. Shinayong is almost certain that if he puts the sample in front of Orochimaru, this guy will definitely give him a gratifying result. According to his idea, since there's a barrier, he will not be in danger even if the monsters are not sealed. However, Miroku insisted on going with him to the barrier of the swamp country. To be honest, when looking at the shrine maiden head-on, Shinayong was still a little panicked. This little girl seemed to have a pair of eyes that could see through the world. Although Shinayong said that he would return to Konoha soon, the shrine maiden seemed to be determined that he would go back to the altar and must go with him. Well, it's actually nothing, and fortunately, compared to his daughter Shin, Miroku's mobility and combat effectiveness are far beyond Shinayong's imagination. It can be said that although the other party is still just a little girl, if you count a mysterious power passed down from generation to generation by the shrine maidens, she is enough to compete with most of the senior ninjas. Tisk, this kind of bloodline inheritance power is simply cheating. Okay, I admit that Shinayong is not qualified to say such things. Sho, she whispered softly. In front of her raised right palm, a pale yellow wall of light appeared out of thin air, and through the gaps in the light, faint roars could be heard from within. That's right, this is the barrier that trapped the monsters. Is it because of the legendary undead army? Shinayong shook his head. He couldn't find the answer yet. But, he was not a picky detective. With a flash of his hand, he also placed his palm on the barrier. It felt cold to the touch. The things inside can't get out, so is there any way the outside world can interfere with it? Miroku shook his head. Wonglian are actually monsters born from the world's feminine energy long ago. Compared to Wonglian, the energy of the Miko is more masculine. Her palm was still pressing against the indestructible barrier. In theory, only pure masculine energy can pass through this barrier, which means only the Miko can. Frowning, Shinayong tried to exert a little force. To his surprise, as he exerted force, the barrier seemed to rebound with an even greater force. Shinayong couldn't help but step back. This thing is really weird. But if that's the case, Shinayong naturally can't get the Wulian's body from inside the barrier. In other words, this trip was completely in vain? No. He touched his chin and paced back and forth in front of the barrier. Wait, did Miroku just say, only masculine energy can pass through the barrier? If that's the case. Wood release, Sword Mountain Forest. With two palms pounding the ground, his Yang-Tsuku chakra began to circulate frantically within Shinayong's body. In the blink of an eye, he had passed through the invisible barrier and entered the unbreakable enchantment. A moment later, an angry roar echoed from within the enchantment. Was he hurt? Shinayong's lips finally curled up into a smile. His guess was correct. Using only Wood Tsuku, with the interference of his Yang-Tsuku energies, his attack could completely penetrate the barrier. And upon successfully striking the demon, Jinyoung completely forgot about his plan to peel off its flesh and take it back for research. He discovered something even more intriguing. A faint yellow glow illuminated the enchantment's interior. A massive black shadow was struggling violently, while countless wooden spikes continuously protruded from the ground. And those stab wounds, dripping with blood, began to emit some white gas. Is that essence? Miroku was finally shocked by the scene before his eyes for the first time. It was beyond her expectation that Jinyoung's escape technique could harm the monsters through the barrier, but the current situation made the witch speechless. This human in front of her actually began to absorb the essence of the monsters. Obviously, Jinyoung didn't know if this thing was actually so-called essence, but he could sense that this energy was a lower-level energy than the Yang Tsukashi chakra within his body. That's right, now he finally understood why the power of the Miko and the Goblin was different from the chakra of ordinary ninjas, and even complemented and even amplified it. This was a kind of energy in the process of purification, but it was much more mature than the Yang Tsukashi of the Senju or the Yin Tsukashi of the Uchiha. And what delighted Jinyoung the most was that with the help of this energy, his Yang Tsukashi chakra began to become more active, and the total amount of chakra, which usually required a lot of accumulation to increase slightly, also began to strangely soar. Wait a minute. Could this be the legendary absorption method? Chapter 92, Long-Term Meal Ticket. The entire process lasted for about 5 full days. Well, if I'm not mistaken, this whole process was longer than all the times Jinyoung had traveled combined. And even if he was an Iron Man, 5 days and 5 nights without sleep would have pushed Jinyoung to his limit. However, compared to the physical pain, the intense excitement in his mind made him want to immediately test his current level of ability. Quantitative change leads to qualitative change. In these 5 days, the total amount of chakras Jinyoung absorbed had long exceeded his original total chakra reserves. Simply put, his body was now almost overflowing with chakra. The reason he came here to search for a powerful summoning beast wasn't because he didn't want to rely on his own strength to make further progress. Quite the contrary. He was constantly striving to improve his own strength. However, compared to Minato's visible growth and predictable strength, with wood release, his path to becoming a Kage seemed a long way off. It was because, at this stage, even if he used all his strength to extract chakra from his body, he still couldn't fill it up. No, he couldn't even feel the size of the chakra container in his body. With the blood of the Uzumaki clan, Jinyoung possessed chakra refining and recovery speeds unmatched by ordinary people, but even so, he still felt powerless to accumulate this much chakra. Just imagine it. How much chakra did the Shodaime possess who was able to defeat Uchiha Madara and the Nine Tails head-on? Even after taming the Nine Tails, he could use wood release's chakra draining ability to drain the opponent's chakra for replenishment. But before that, defeating the opponent head-on meant Senju Tsukima had to, at the very least, surpass the Nine Tails and Madara's combined output in a short period of time. Simply put, even if the Nine Tails and Madara had infinite blue bars, the First Hokage, Senju Hashirama, could still outperform both of them combined. This was simply beyond human reach, like a chakra-generating machine. Shinao realized he didn't have the same talent as the First Hokage, and he couldn't increase his chakra to that level so quickly. For him, such accumulation would take a long time, perhaps 10, perhaps 20. In short, for Shinao, further advancement wasn't something he could solve quickly, until today, when he encountered the Wraith. This energy, with different properties but slightly lower quality, was Shinao's natural tonic. Yin alone cannot produce life, and Yang alone cannot thrive. Just this one extraction was worth years of hard work for Shinao. The only problem is that after completing such an extraction, Jinyoung may need to spend several months like before to adapt to his own increased strength. Well, compared with a long road before, this result is already much better. The dividing line for recuperation, considering that Jinyoung was in a bad condition after completing the absorption, Maitreya found a village nearby and let Jinyoung rest for a while. But fortunately, Jinyoung, who already had a family, did not trouble Maitreya to take care of him at all. He found a comfortable position and fell asleep. And when he woke up, another day had passed. "You have recovered well." When he went out again, Maitreya was already sitting in the pavilion outside, doing some simple treatments for the patients in the village. Tisk, are all witches kind-hearted? Aha, that's all thanks to that monster the chakra had basically stabilized. What Shinao needed to do next was to adapt to the current state as quickly as possible. It was just a single absorption, but Shinayong felt that he had almost touched the threshold of cage level. Of course, maybe this was just an illusion when his strength was out of control. Moroku nodded, indicating to the villagers that he still had some things to deal with, then stood up and walked towards Shinayong. I think we should talk. Her voice was still as calm and ethereal as when they first met, but there was a certain magical power that convinced people. Well, I'll listen to you. After all, he had taken such a big advantage of her. Although it was also a disguised way of helping her solve her problem. But people like Shinayong really don't like to owe favors to others. In this life, having that silly girl, Jiu, around is enough for him to worry about. Judging from the past 2 days, you seem capable of dealing with a Wulian. Yes, she replied without hesitation. The Miko had no vested interest in the Fire Nation, so Jinayong felt free to speak frankly about his abilities. The energy I cultivate, in a sense, might just be enough to restrain it, then, can I destroy it directly? Jinayong shook his head awkwardly. I'm afraid it's difficult. He wasn't lying. While the absorption had indeed weakened the Wulian, Jinayong could sense that its energy showed no signs of depletion. Although he had absorbed a significant amount, judging by the total, it was only about a third. Moroku frowned slightly, but then relaxed. This was the Miko's job. Since outsiders couldn't solve the problem, it remained the same as before. There was no need to grieve. However, if you absorb it every once in a while, you should be able to suppress it in a weak state, although the weakness of this monster has nothing to do with Jinayong's heart. With the power of this thing, Jinayong doesn't think it can really fight against the current cage-level masters of the major villages. But on the one hand, this is considered to be helping the witch, the demon kingdom. Secondly, haha, don't mind, this thing is the source of trouble for you, but for me, Jinayong stretched out his voice and even subconsciously licked his lips like Orochimaru. That's my long-term meal ticket. Chapter 93, The Most Admired Back. Let's return to the distant village of Konoha for a moment. Compared to Shinayu, Ryu's living space is even more limited, at least, as a member of the Anbu. Without any special privileges, she's more of a tool for the mission. No, more than that. In fact, she also serves as a double agent. As Kagami said, Ryu has her own ambitions. Perhaps this is the only difference between her and Uchiha Itachi. As for the rest, she is undoubtedly as talented as Itachi. In the mission where Dan sacrificed himself, the plot that Miyu knew had actually been partially embellished. Because during the dispersed breakout, Jin had been separated from the main force for a period of time, and during that time, only the kid who was also from the Anbu was by her side. Dividing line for switching perspectives, Senior, will we die here this time? Coming to the Anbu for training was both his father's wish and his own hope. Shinosuke didn't want others to see him as Sarutobi Hiruzen's eldest son. He hoped that in the eyes of others, he would be himself, Sarutobi Shinosuke. However, this would definitely be difficult. So, to silence Yu and also to prove himself, Shinosuke chose to join the Anbu, even though he was only 11 years old. This was his first time on the battlefield, and Shinosuke finally realized that compared to those battle-hardened veterans, he was truly just a child, facing the foreseeable death. His hands trembled. If you want to die, then go ahead. From her voice, the Anbu he had always called Senpai was no more than 12 or 13 years old. But since setting foot on the land of the Rain Country, this senior's advice had saved him more than once. In this situation, Shinosuke almost instinctively wanted to rely on this extremely reliable senior, but there was no other way. For a child, letting them face death alone was too cruel, even though both Shinayu and Washi had experienced this cruelty repeatedly and gradually grew up. The plan order had been issued. Faced with the overwhelming force of the enemy, the captain chose to disperse, meaning, how many survived depended entirely on their own luck, and the direction and form of their breakout were entirely up to their own judgment, their own life, their own destiny. Breakout. Dan, the captain, led the charge. While his ninjutsu wasn't suited to frontal combat, in this situation, with insufficient cover, he could slowly kill the enemy. After him, came Tsunade, the princess of Konoha. Following her lover's lead, Tsunade rushed forward without hesitation. And then, Waki. While the others hesitated, Waki decisively chose to break out in the opposite direction of Tsunade. As a member of the Uchiha clan, she had no obligation to aid the Senju princess. To him now, Konoha and the Uchiha were merely disposable pawns. From the very beginning, all she cared about was Senju Mahiro. and closely following behind Eagle was a brat, also from the Anbu. Compared to Dan, Tsunade, or Eagle, he had no idea why he was doing this, or whether he should even act at all at this moment. He simply followed that figure, that perfect, powerful figure. Even his father, Sarutobi Hiruzen, hadn't given him this enchanting sense of security. As if as long as he followed in his footsteps, he'd never fall. Of course, for Eagle, walking in front, this wasn't a big deal, an unsuspecting brat, but if he was just serving as a distraction, it didn't seem to matter. The dividing line of the last blow, the escape has lasted for more than an hour from the beginning to now. For the ninjas who are good at instantaneous bursts of energy, the situation has now become a competition of endurance. Whether you are the fleeing party or the pursuing party, continuing to fight means great risks. However, when it has lasted to this point, no one will choose to give up. Earth-style, excavation and digging, the rock ninja, who had the upper hand in numbers, used ninjutsu unscrupulously. The ground beneath their feet suddenly cracked and turned to both sides. After losing their foothold, the terrible rock pillars rose from the air under their feet. Without a word, Eagle had long since lost the energy to speak, and the brat following behind her was practically on the verge of death. Whether physically or mentally, the brat, unaccustomed to this level of combat, had managed to hold on until this point. It was already a miracle. Instant. After avoiding the enemy's ninjutsu's lethal range, Eagle immediately chose to confront the enemy. Her previous actions had already delayed her, and continuing to flee would only lead to her being trapped. Ninja tools, chakra, detonating tags, all the resources of war were practically exhausted, and the battle situation had begun to take a turn for the most unfavorable. But Eagle had never considered that she would die here. She couldn't die. Absolutely not. Swish, the last kunai was already in his hand, but there were still 5 enemies. The Iwagakure ninjas who were approaching cautiously obviously knew the principle of a trapped beast fighting a desperate battle. They didn't want to cause any more damage at this time. But they were probably too cautious. If they had another chance to choose, I think they would probably choose to rush forward. Because under the mask, the Sharingan, which already had 3 Magatama, suddenly spun rapidly. The inky Magatama gradually melted, and actually outlined a triangular windmill pattern. Amaterasu. Chapter 94, A New Era. For the vast expanse of Earth, the history of humanity, or rather, of ninjas, is a fleeting moment. 5 years. For the short-lived species, this might be a sea change, but facing the colossal Yan, Shinryu felt as if nothing had changed. 5 years had passed, and at the age of 18, he had become a handsome young man. The powerful energy hidden within this body had also made the name of Senju Shinryu a resounding symbol within Konoha village. The Senju clan had experienced a resurgence, even more legendary than the Uchiha. 40 years ago, a ninja named Hashirama Senju almost single-handedly led the clan to its peak of prosperity. And 40 years later, just as everyone had begun to forget the clan, another ninja rose to power, leading the fallen Senju clan to a powerful rise. Like Sarutobi and Danzo, the Sannin and Tsukumo. This was the age of the Senju clan. Among Konoha's rising talents, this young man named Senju Shinryu would undoubtedly become a leader. With his yang-style physique fully developed, Shinryu's use of wood style has also reached an incredible realm. Now, he finally glimpses the power of Hashirama Senju, who is able to defeat Uchiha Madara. Not only is his destructive power immense, but those towering trees, seemingly like weeds, possess a near indestructible quality. When cut, they break in two, and when burned, they sprout even more vigorously. At this point, Senju's wood style has finally begun to regain its former glory, and what delights Shinryu most is that he has approached the realm that the first generation had so enchanted. Recently, Shinryu finally touched the edge of that. Although he can't maintain it for long, even a moment is enough to turn the tide of battle. Even when facing the enemy in his normal state, the current Shinryu is definitely infinitely close to the cage level, and if we talk about actual combat power, he is even above the average cage level powerhouse. Of course, it's not just Shinryu who has made progress. In the past 5 years, Minato has not wasted this golden time. Regarding Flying Thunder God, through the relevant information left by the second generation of the Book of Ninja, Minato is already able to use it as if it were moving his arms, just like in the original work. Compared with the increasingly advanced space ninjutsu, the bodybuilding technique that he has been practicing with the help of Shinryu has also improved significantly. After 5 years, not only has Shinayong been able to challenge the cage-level powerhouses with dignity, Minato's strength has unknowingly crossed the gate. It's just that compared to the famous wood release, Minato's reputation has not yet been revealed. Of course. Although due to her special identity, Waki's position in the Anbu has not been promoted at all in the past 5 years, but in terms of personal combat power, she is no longer the same, compared with Minato, although she may not be able to compete with a future Fourth Hokage. In terms of absolute strength, she is definitely more hidden than Minato. Waki, who has already opened the main Gekyo Sharingan, has not encountered any other bottlenecks except for her declining eyesight. She was originally at the bottom of the strength list among the 3 people, but she has become a powerful ninja without knowing it. As a result, within the Uchiha clan, the attitude towards Waka has gradually changed from suppression to dialogue. Perhaps they are still unaware that Waka has opened the main Gekyo, but Uchiha Kagami has personally admitted that he is no longer a match for this little girl. Apart from the protagonist and his friends, the others have certainly made some progress. Orochimaru's research has become more in-depth, and just recently, the impure world reincarnation has been conquered. Not long after Jiraiya returned to the village, he embarked on a journey through the ninja world again, but Tsunade, one of the 3 ninjas, is still missing. And what surprised Shinayong the most was Yujin, who he brought from the land of water 5 years ago. The little boy who was often dressed as a girl by his mother back then. As expected, he couldn't escape the fate of being a pseudo-girl when he grew up. Ahem, the surprise was not this, of course, but the power that Yujin displayed in using blood. The blood of the yin-yang awakened in him, and now Yujin can control his ability to make everything he touches age rapidly. All that possesses ki and blood is like grass and trees, flowers must wither and grass must die. This power, truly absolute, will surely become Shinayong's most reliable aid in the near future. Tisk, 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 such an exciting thing, how could I not prepare properly? Orochimaru, still that damp, slippery, cold feeling. It seemed that ever since he started working with this man, certain illegal things had been put on Shinayu's agenda one after another, and now, he was finally about to embark on the most risky step of his plan. Let's go. The 2 figures disappeared into the darkness at the same time. They were going to find someone, or more accurately, to kill this person, a figure with a grudge against both of them, and a well-known figure in the ninja world. After all, it was a waste to use the impure world reincarnation that had been completed with great difficulty on an unknown person. Chapter 95, The Best Opportunity. Killing any cage-level ninja is no easy task, even one as powerful as Uchiha Madara. The term cage originally referred to the strongest ninja in each village. Even the more generalized cage level refers to a ninja capable of commanding a village. Such a ninja's combat prowess and combat experience, balanced across multiple qualities, must have reached a formidable height. How could such a ninja fall so easily? Therefore, even with overwhelming power, directly killing a cage-level ninja requires considerable skill and meticulous planning. So, what if the opponent is a demigod-level ninja? What if this assassination operation doesn't need to be carried out in secrecy? It's a nearly impossible task. The experienced Danzo would never give other forces the chance to kill him. But this time, the opportunity to actively invite the leaders of other forces to hold a peace conference, Shinayong has been waiting for too long. The people from the route easily sneaked into several of the forces, and secretly replaced the leaders of these forces. After that, they began to spread that the reason why Danzo wanted everyone to gather in the Rain Village was actually to eliminate other discordant voices in one fell swoop. As expected, this news made all the participating forces hesitate. Although it is far inferior to the 5 major ninja villages, Danzo's Rain Village is definitely a behemoth that has the final say in the Rain country. The participants proposed that a peace conference must be held outside the Rain Village, and Danzo agreed without hesitation. Because he could never have imagined that this peace conference would be his last swan song as a demigod in the ninja world, the impure world reincarnation has been successfully cracked, and the targets of several experiments can be summoned correctly. For the official operation this time, Shinayong needs to find a powerful force to be the guard of his Senju clan. Moreover, he has not forgotten the guy who almost killed him with overwhelming power a few years ago. Similarly, Orochimaru does not like the title he got for being spared. Danzo is no fool. He never replaces more than 1/5 of his shadow guards at a time. If they were all replaced at once, the old man would definitely notice. He pulled his hood down, But Orochimaru could clearly feel the other man's disdainful gaze. Of course, he was used to it. It's not like everyone is like you, not caring about who's around them during experiments. The rain showed no sign of calming down, but instead became increasingly lingering. In this kind of weather, it would be difficult for ordinary people to even see clearly more than a few dozen meters away, let alone an ambush. But neither of them seemed worried about missing each other. Just hold him for half a minute. Once that's up, I'll naturally return to support him. That's not a problem. Orochimaru narrowed his snake-like pupils and subconsciously touched his right wrist. This time, the shame he had left behind must be avenged once and for all. Use his life in return. I still want to have some fun with him. Looking at Snake's neurotic look, Zenayon sighed and continued to remind him, don't go too far. This is not a battlefield. If we let Hanzo escape, we will be in big trouble. It's okay. The golden pupil stared into the distance, and it seemed that he didn't take Zenayong's words into his ears at all. You are responsible for trapping the enemy and setting up the barrier. I just need to think about how to kill him. Zenayong had nothing to say about someone's shamelessness. If Hanzo really wanted to leave, they would probably be in a tough battle. You'd better kill him quickly. Leave it to me. The battle hadn't even begun, but Orochimaru was already clearly excited. Facing the opponent who had once defeated him, the ninja scientist couldn't contain his excitement. Compared to the Orochimaru of more than 10 years later, the current Orochimaru was still a little younger. Shinryu shook his head, then used wood release, creating an invisible barrier around them. If he didn't, Orochimaru's intense murderous aura would probably alert the enemy ninja from afar. Orochimaru, I'll say this one last time, Shinryu emphasized his tone. These past few years had given him a deeper understanding of his own strength. Even the once untouchable Orochimaru, he now had no fear. Your mission is to trap Hanzo. As for killing him, leave it to me, Tisk. I've been curious from the beginning. Can you really kill him so quickly? What nonsense are you talking about? Shinryu brushed off the raindrops falling on himself and stood up, his gaze fixed on the northeast. Was that where it came from? If I wasn't sure, I wouldn't be here. P.S. I'm back. Damn, Finghuaxuayu didn't bring any money. Chapter 96, Bloody Fight. Rain Village. Topographically, this is a land of rocky and sandy soil. Rain is plentiful, perhaps even excessive. From an agricultural perspective, it's not what people often call a fertile land, but the reality is, it's even worse than one might imagine. The land of earth, the land of fire, the land of water, even the land of lightning. This small expanse of land borders numerous great powers. For a nation without a powerful ninja village, this is a terrifying prospect. After all, in the history of the ninja world, only the mighty Konoha has managed to wage war against more than two major powers simultaneously. However, due to this unique geographical location, Rain Village always bears the brunt of every conflict, seizure, occupation, destruction, plunder. Before Hanzo's arrival, it was practically a ruin. This is why, despite his harsh rule, Hanzo remains a hero to this land. Indeed, it is precisely his demigod-like power that has allowed this overwhelmed land a moment of respite. Until today, the Land of Rain has gradually begun its reconstruction. If history had not changed, that is, if other great powers had not interfered, the Land of Rain would have had a brief opportunity for development. However, myths must eventually be shattered, just as countless gods throughout history have been destroyed and countless others reborn. The legend of the demigods in the ninja world has finally come to an end. This cowardly nation, its repetitive, timid cries, serves as the perfect cover for assassins. Perhaps this is the curse of the Rain Country. The ninjas who have lived here for a long time are clearly aware of this. Their only advantage is that the paths they choose often offer little visual obstruction. The vast stone plains make concealment difficult, while using long-range attacks would reveal their position, giving them time to react. Of course, none of this is paramount. These masked ninjas are fearless, for standing among them is the man known as the demigod of the ninja world. As long as Hanzo-sama is here, this place is absolutely safe. At least in the Rain Country, no one has ever dared to attack a demigod. But this moment, however, is destined to be an exception. Wood release, Flower Tree Realm arrives. The ground begins to shake strangely. But at that moment, the people don't know where to hide. The impact is so vast. It feels as if the entire stone plain has experienced a once-in-a-century earthquake in the blink of an eye. Boom! A series of explosions erupted. The solid ground was pierced by massive trees, brimming with vitality. Massive trees, which would have taken decades, even centuries to form, merged into one in a split second, like a forest appearing out of thin air. This once vibrant display now seemed even more ferocious and terrifying. Disperse. Instinctively responding to danger, the ninjas of the Rain Village immediately retreated in different directions. Faced with such a large-scale attack, dodging the initial destructive blows was undoubtedly every ninja's first reaction. In most cases, this would be perfectly valid, but this time, their opponent was destined to be special. Everything was going according to plan. The power of wood release wasn't solely due to its immediate destructive power. As Shinai watched the rain ninjas disperse and flee, a playful smile played on his face. For ninjas below a certain level, escaping would be meaningless if they couldn't immediately avoid the entire forest. After all, this was the home turf of the Senju clan. Soon, the first screams rang out. The once still giant trees began to dance frantically. The sharp branches and dense undergrowth instantly transformed into life-threatening messengers, endlessly entangling the panicked ninjas. And for the enemy, if they were entangled by any of the bushes, the domineering, seizing force would quickly transform them into aged, mummified corpses. The drain on chakra, even on their very life force, caused Shinai to instantly halt the supply of chakra to the flower tree world's descending chakra. The remaining ninjas still struggling within this vast forest would naturally become sustenance for this technique. Yes, this was truly terrifying wood release. However, this jutsu wasn't without flaws, especially for a ninja of Hanzo's caliber. This technique, designed for dealing with large-scale enemies, wasn't strong enough to eliminate Hell's elite targets. The flowers had already bloomed, but for Hanzo, with his toxic physique, this couldn't stop him. As an experienced man, he knew very well that the only way to have a chance of winning against this sudden enemy was to create a suitable battlefield for himself. So, the summoning technique. Bang! As the iconic smoke dissipated, Hanzo's signature summon beast, the salamander, finally revealed its monster face. Xianyang was very familiar with this thing, but there were others who had a more detailed understanding of this monster than him. Bang! Almost at the same time as the salamander appeared, a huge python also appeared out of thin air. Its sharp teeth and powerful body simultaneously entangled the ferocious opponent, and on the treetops farther away, Hanzo saw a familiar figure. Orochimaru. It's you, Tisk. As a habitual action, the wet tongue licked Orochimaru's own lips again. You don't think that what happened back then is over? Chapter 97, Snake Battle. Orochimaru. It's you, Tisk. As a habitual action, the wet tongue licked Orochimaru's own lips again. You don't think that what happened back then is over? For Hanzo, when he faced the young Sannin, he chose the safest strategy. Hanzo, who possessed overwhelming strength, always had spare strength in the battle, so that although the Sannin were defeated by him, none of them suffered fatal injuries. For Konoha, which was about to win the Second World War, this was undoubtedly an obvious signal of goodwill. However, this signal was not useful to everyone. Time and space have changed. If Hanzo had met Jiraiya or Tsunade today, they might have been grateful for the favor of not killing him and shown mercy. But unfortunately, today he faced Orochimaru, the most erratic of the Sannin. Snakes possess an astonishing memory and a vengeful heart. They show absolutely no mercy to those who have wronged them. Given the opportunity, these cold-blooded creatures will tear the prey's flesh and inject their deadliest toxins into their bloodstream without hesitation. This is the snake's nature. Proud Orochimaru could not forgive his loss of composure that day, nor could he let the name he earned through failure be sung. This was a shame. An unforgivable sin. Therefore, this shame, this sin, must be washed away in a bloodbath. If there's any blame, it's only for not killing me outright that day. Shadow Snake Hand. Whether it was speed or destructive power, this time, Orochimaru didn't even need to cast a hand seal. Exactly the same moves, but over the years, Orochimaru has used his own battles to tell his opponent that he is no longer the same as before. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. Although Hanzo had heard that Orochimaru had been promoted to the level of Kage, judging from the current battle situation, the opponent is a very tough opponent even among the Kage level. The simple first round of confrontation has fully demonstrated his strength that was directly inherited from the ninjutsu Dr. Sarutobi. In this case, counting the users of wood release hidden in the dark, A conservative estimate is that Hanzo will have to withstand the attacks of 2 cage-level people in a short period of time. Then, only by not holding back from the beginning can he have a chance of escaping. That's right. Hanzo's goal from the beginning was not to defeat the 2. Whether it is Orochimaru or the mysterious wood release, they are obviously not easy to deal with, and facing the 2 at the same time, compared to the 3 ninjas who were still immature back then, this is already a force that can shock the ninja world. Poison mist spray. The salamander opened its mouth, and a purple poisonous mist quickly spread. Even a tiny inhalation of that terrifying gas was fatal. Furthermore, the battle-hardened Hanzo knew that simply fleeing wouldn't work if he wanted to escape the 2. Even if he was confident in his speed, he was still on their home turf. Therefore, using the poisonous mist would, firstly, delay Orochimaru's attack. The lurking snake hand, now a headless fly, would naturally pose a much lesser threat. Secondly, the thick purple mist would temporarily block both sides' line of sight. Now was the opportunity to prepare for escape. Salamander, burrow. Breaking free from the clutches of the snakes, the salamander sprang into action instantly. While not quite as impressive as the uniquely eccentric summons of the animal path, one of Nagato's 6 paths, the salamander was undoubtedly Hanzo's indispensable companion in battle, playing a vital role in flanking harassment, direct confrontation, and even in retreat. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one who knew of this ability. Back then, Orochimaru had gnashed his teeth at this burrowing monster. Hanzo, do you think your move would still work after all these years? Earth Style, Great River of Earth. As the Sandame's most skilled Earth Style ninjutsu, how could Orochimaru, known as a ninjutsu prodigy, not learn from it? For a ninja capable of burrowing underground, Great River of Earth could completely negate their advantage. But in reality, this jutsu, which consumes a lot of chakra, isn't the best choice. Techniques that alter terrain in one go are completely unreliable. If the opponent uses the same trick again, it would be a completely disadvantageous attritional battle. However, using this jutsu here certainly makes sense. Puff, the ground broke apart. In the shifting earth, the salamander finally emerged, though he looked somewhat distraught. This quicksand-like structure caused Hanzo considerable trouble in his escape. And the sudden change in pressure, the moment he lost control of his body, gave Orochimaru the perfect opportunity to kill. The massive body of the snake slammed into the still struggling salamander, and Orochimaru, taking advantage of the latter's unstoppable levitation, finally unleashed his ultimate move. Earth Style, Earth Dragon Bullet Technique. Utilizing the Earth Flow River he had just used, the Earth Dragon Bullet's power was even greater. Undoubtedly, this was the unwavering instruction of the Sandame. The roaring Earth Dragon instantly rose to a pitch that obscured the heavens and sun. In the blink of an eye, the ferocious head slammed into Hanzo's body. Boom! The terrifying destructive force sent a tremendous shockwave, but Orochimaru showed no sign of joy. Come out! Farther away, Hanzo's figure gradually emerged from beneath the earth. In this crucial battle, the demigod used a clone jutsu to successfully seize the initiative. Haha, Orochimaru, you've grown, but unfortunately, you're still no match for me. You're still too young. His snake pupils stood upside down, and the chilling murderous aura that sent a chill through his body lasted only a moment before Orochimaru's sinister smile returned. No, you're old. Before he could finish his words, a younger man suddenly appeared amidst the layers of trees. His hands were clasped together, his eyes tightly closed, but a purple inscription gradually appeared on his cheek. Zhen Yuang knew that this state was not stable at all, and it didn't even last for 10 seconds, but it was enough. Sage Mode. On. P.S. Yesterday on Valentine's Day, I was even better. I only gained less than 300 votes. I'm so sad. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 98, Never Team Up with Uncle Snake Again. The hands that had been gripping the weapon unconsciously loosened their grip. The specially crafted sickle fell to the back of the salamander, but Hanzo had no intention of retrieving it. Although he knew from the beginning that it wasn't just Orochimaru who was against him, and even the young wood release user from Konoha, he never expected that the kid who was supposed to be just 18 years old in the intelligence would have reached this level. This move was originally a legend of the older generation. It belonged to the legendary ninja named Senju Hashirama, a divine skill that had never been easily revealed to others. The huge Dharma image that appeared out of thin air, and the many arms that opened behind him, immediately crushed the demigod's determination to die. No one could resist the power of the immortal, ultimate move dividing line, Sage Mode. On. Strange inscriptions began to appear on Henion's cheeks, on his eye sockets, cheeks, and between his brows. Purple cloud patterns instantly adorned his already handsome features with a touch of splendor. Of course, these changes only lasted for a moment, and if you didn't observe closely, you wouldn't notice. People's attention was mostly drawn to the astonishing phenomenon occurring behind him. Unlike the previous scene when he used the tree realm to descend, the earth shook, but in a remarkably short time, those giant trees grew behind Henion. A majestic figure, a compassionate face, drooping eyelids, and countless pairs of giant hands began to frantically reach out, exorcising demons and straightening things out. Would release, true thousand hands. This was a scene only seen in mythology. The gigantic Buddha, seemingly reaching for the heavens, instantly surpassed the insignificant hills around him. The moment his majestic figure reappeared, it completely destroyed anyone's confidence in resisting it. This was the power of God, the majesty of God, the advent of God. All things seemed to be intimidated by this astonishing might. Fate chanting in Sanskrit actually began to linger between heaven and earth. So, it was time to attack. Seal his hands, and there was no trace of confusion or hesitation in Henion's eyes. Would release, Tapada. The Buddha's compassion, the Vajra's wrath. The countless arms behind the Dharmakaya finally fully extended. What followed was an overwhelming onslaught. The hands that had been holding the weapon loosened subconsciously. The specially made sickle fell on the back of the salamander, but Hanzo had no intention of picking up the weapon. Although he knew from the beginning that it was not only Orochimaru who was against him, but even the young wood-release user of Konoha, but he never expected that the kid who was only 18 years old in the intelligence had reached this level. This was originally a trick that existed in the legends of the older generation. It was a magical skill that belonged to the ninja legend named Senju Hashirama, who had never shown it to others easily. The huge Dharma image that appeared out of thin air and the many arms opened behind him directly crushed the demigod's determination to die. No one can resist the power of the immortal. Finally, the impact from the terrible giant hands merged into one. The terrifying sound of crashing, along with the shattering of the earth, continued to strike people's ears. Orochimaru, who was standing aside, had already retreated, and even his originally interested face had long been replaced by a solemn and serious expression. Although Shinayu has been an ally for the past few years, the two actually each kept their own secrets. Perhaps even Orochimaru himself knew that Konoha would not be the place where he would spend the rest of his life. But for Shinayu, who possesses the Senju clan, he is destined to become an indispensable piece of the puzzle for Konoha's future. Ask yourself, Orochimaru, who has completed the soft transformation, has no confidence in resisting this catastrophic attack in front of him. If he is hit head-on, he will die. At this thought, the cold snake pupils suddenly tighten even more terrifyingly. For Shinayu, who is in a state of combat, of course he has no time to care about Orochimaru's feelings. In fact, he himself is under tremendous pressure. 7 seconds. Is it over? The eye patterns representing Sage Mode quickly faded, and the Buddha statue behind him, once a site of divine punishment, instantly annihilated, reduced to rotten wood. This move was barely possible through forced Sage Mode. It was with this technique that the Shodaime defeated Uchiha Madara and the Nine Tails head-on at the Valley of the End. Or rather, compared to the two giants, the Nine Tails, unassisted, played no decisive role in that battle. But what Shinayu was doing now with his true thousand hands. Tisk, that's not even close. Strength drained, Shinayu sat down on the ground, panting. Compared to the Shodaime, who destroyed Susanoo with a single strike, simply facing Hanzo, who was defenseless, had nearly exhausted Shinayu's strength. Ultimately, maintaining such a massive force was beyond Shinayu's ability. But the outcome was certain. By the time Shinayu decided to use this move, Hanzo had already lost his chance. As the ultimate weapon of the former ninja god, perhaps only Uchiha Madara could rival it in this world. Brilliant, Orochimaru's signature voice echoed again. From atop a nearby giant tree, Orochimaru quipped as the exhausted Mayu collapsed to the ground. I didn't expect you could pull off something like this. The Shogun was no better, huh? Mayu chuckled bitterly. You think so, don't you? No. Orochimaru shook his head. That's not right. At least if it were the shogun, he wouldn't be in such a state of disarray. Can you still stand? Mayu's pupils constricted. What did this mean? He had always been wary of Orochimaru, that nerdy geek. Mayu's current situation was dire, but if Orochimaru truly had any intentions. His gaze cooled. Tisk tisk, perfect research material. Orochimaru habitually licked his lips with his long tongue. The gesture sent a shiver down Mayu's spine. Disgusting. Just kidding, just kidding. A second later, Orochimaru waved his hand, mumbling to himself, ignoring Shinayong's reaction. Instead, he quickly approached and lifted him up. Hurry up and absorb all the surrounding trees. Otherwise, the noise will soon reveal us. I understand. Where's Hanzo? I've collected them. That's good. Only then did Shinayong, having calmed down, realize that Orochimaru, who still hadn't completed his reincarnation technique, could possibly attack him right now. Furthermore, having just witnessed him unleash such a terrifying attack, it would be irrational for him to confront him without a countermeasure. Orochimaru wasn't that stupid. It's just, Uncle Orochimaru, it's such a waste of your expression and talent if you don't go film a movie. Damn it. Shinayong cursed in his heart. I'll never team up with Uncle Orochimaru on a mission again. Chapter 99, Before the Undercurrent. By the time Shinayong returned to Konoha, only 3 days had passed. Unnoticed by anyone, a legendary figure in the ninja world had passed away. The demigod Hanzo, who had become Shinayong's greatest supporter for the next countless years, rested peacefully within the Senju clan's forbidden grounds. Of course, after this remarkable experiment, all the precious specimens in Orochimaru's laboratory were put to use. It's worth noting that not everyone can be successfully reincarnated. Take, for example, the Shadaime and Nidaime, who had long been enshrined there. Despite attempts, neither Orochimaru nor Shinayu's spells could successfully recreate the correct subjects. In the original story, the Shadaime first appeared during Orochimaru's Konoha destruction plan, but that was over a decade later. Did Orochimaru solve the problem in that time? However, as things stand now, Shinayu and Orochimaru haven't even figured out the problem, let alone a solution. But that's the topic for now. In the past 5 years, not only has Shinayong's personal strength improved by leaps and bounds, but more importantly, he is now a member of the real power group within the current Muai clan. In the eyes of Konoha's upper echelons, Shinayong is no longer the little kid with endless potential, but a true spokesperson for a powerful force that can stand against them. In fact, in the dark world of Konoha, Shinayong is already the highest-ranking official under Danzo. In just 5 years. This rapid growth in strength, character, and real power has made everyone look at Shinayong with new eyes. Some small and medium-sized families in the village have even begun to side with Shinayong. And this time, the actions Shinayong makes will largely determine the future distribution of power within Konoha. After tidying up his clothes, Shinayong walked into the residence of the Hyuga clan, a powerful family in the Muai clan. That's right, after receiving Hanzo's reincarnation, Shinayong began to work on further dividing the forces within Konoha. During this period, he not only extended his hand to the Yamanaka family, who were close to the root, but also to the female family, targeting the Hokage's line, and he also began to extend his hand to the Hyuga family, who had always been in step with Sarutobi. As Konoha's second blood family, although it was far less famous than the Uchiha family, it was undeniable that the Hyuga family, who had firmly stood on the side of the Shadaime since the establishment of Konoha, had a pivotal position in the village. This force had not yet reached the level of threatening Konoha, so they became the Hokage's best allies. Whether it was on the issue of the root or the Uchiha, they agreed with the Sandaime's opinion. Despite his status as the Senju clan's head, it was clear that Shinayu, whose primary power was concentrated in the Anbu, would find little support from the Hyuga clan. However, Shinayu sought no assistance in the all-out power struggle within the village. He simply sought minimal inaction, or perhaps even tampering with their misfortune. Indeed, these words were a clear signal to the seasoned elders before him. Young man, don't you think you're being too hasty? The village needs stability. The Hyuga clan elder sat at the head of the group, as he impressed himself in the village, seemingly always amiable. Shinayu's intentions were clear. He might soon attack Danzo. Considering the overall situation, this was undoubtedly a superfluous move. With the young and promising Shinayu, it was clear that the aging Danzo would eventually relinquish power. This gentle transition would be a welcome development for Konoha as a whole. After all, In this situation, losses would be minimized. That's what the great elder said. Shinayu smiled faintly. But I think the Hyuga clan needs some excitement. True, perhaps a gentle transition between Shinayu and Danzo is the ideal outcome for the overall situation, but not everyone wants to see such a transition. Take the Hyuga clan, for example. The conflict between the Root and the Hyuga clan is already very obvious. It can be said that the Hyuga clan, unable to compete with the Root in terms of overall strength, has always been hindered by the Root in village affairs. Therefore, the Hyuga clan's leaders actually hope to see internal problems within the Root clan. But if that's the case, why didn't the Great Elder express his support for Shinayu? The reason is simple. Regardless of whether Shinayu wins this struggle, it's a perfect opportunity for the Hyuga clan to grow. And rather than letting Shinayu, with his ambiguous stance, take power, the Hyuga clan would rather see him lose the power struggle. More precisely, it would be a win-lose situation for both Danzo and the clan. This is the most advantageous situation for the Hyuga clan. These old people at the top of the social ladder are not the easiest to deal with. That day, Shinayu left with a relieved smile. He had received the answer he'd sought. This anticipated conflict was finally coming. He had no intention of deliberately suppressing the news. Even his cooperation with Orochimaru had become more brazen recently. As someone within the Root, he understood perfectly well that no action in the village could escape Danzo's notice. Rather than deceiving himself, it was better to save his energy. That evening, Shinayu returned to his residence, still beaming. Kushina and Minato hadn't married yet, so they weren't officially living together, meaning, Minato was still staying at Shinayu's house. Despite the occasional teasing, Shinayu believed these days of brothers living under the same roof would soon be over. After dinner, the two of them, like their childhood, drank tea and chatted on the second-floor balcony. When are you and Kushina getting married? PFFT, cough cough cough, don't be so shy. Shinayu looked at Minato with disdain, and the latter just scratched his head shyly. It's not decided yet. Tisk tisk, how far has it come? PFFT, cough 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 cough, I really can't stand you. Shinayu spread his hands helplessly. In his era, the relationship between men and women seemed to be much more open than the world of ninjas. However, no matter for Minato or Shinayu, they were already very important in Konoha village, and only at times like this could they really relax and talk about some trivial and harmless gossip. Hey, I think the village might be a little bit uneasy recently. After thinking about his plan, Shinayu decided that he should give Minato a heads up in advance. Although if everything goes well, the impact on the village, or rather, on ordinary people should only be news the next morning, but for the upper echelons of Konoha, this is indeed a real shift of power. I knew it a long time ago. Minato, who had been choked by Shinayu, rolled his eyes at Shinayu. This time, it was the younger brother's turn to be surprised. You've been busy all these years, how could you hide these little actions from me? Minato took a sip of tea, as if he had a clear idea in his head. He smiled smugly at first, but became serious again when he saw Shinayu's puzzled expression. It's because of Eagle. It's because of Uchiha. That's right, the start of this fight was not because Shinayu was eager to take sole power in the Root. In fact, he had no interest in that kind of thing at all. It's just that neither Uchiha nor Danzo gave Shinayu more opportunities to choose. The thing he was most worried about still happened. Because of Eagle's genius performance, the conflict between Uchiha and the village has reached the brink of breaking out. Therefore, before Danzo or Uchiha took action, Shinayu must solve this problem. If something really happened, Shinayu hesitated for a moment, and finally continued, anyway, believe me. Aha. Minato smiled, then stood up and stretched. When did I ever doubt it? Chapter 100, Tryst. From a rational and profit-maximizing perspective, such a move is absolutely unscientific. The situation within the Senju clan, the Uchiha clan, and even Konoha village itself is hardly conducive to a free love relationship between these two young people. Life is truly full of frustrations, like Romeo and Juliet, whose inability to live happily together wasn't due to the bitter rivalry between their families, but rather their lack of a phone to communicate and string together their lines. Ahem, no, that's certainly not the point. It's just that the volatile, seemingly explosive situation within Konoha village clearly forbids any involvement between the two. The Uchiha and the Senju clan, two colossi, have always been linked by conflict. Now, one is the Senju clan leader, the other a spy crucial to the Uchiha's ambitions. But love, sometimes, defies logic, like a moth drawn to a wildfire, forging ahead despite the prospect of being shattered. At least, in the eyes of other elders in the village, Xianyang has done well enough in the past 5 years, even making people think that he has long forgotten the girl from the Uchiha family. But at the very end, at the most critical moment, the young man finally made a mistake, an irreversible mistake, the dividing line of reunion. Very close to Konoha village, the Anbu's action team encountered an unexpected attack. The assailant had no intention of hurting anyone, otherwise those suddenly appearing wooden spikes would not have simply trapped everyone except a certain woman. And in Konoha village, no, it should be said that as of now, in the entire ninja world, the only one who can use wood release is that person, Konoha root, Senju Shinryu. Long time no see, a playful voice chimed in, its exaggerated tone unable to conceal the slightest tremor within it. Jinayang, who feared no death, was momentarily unable to control his emotions perfectly. Despite the mask, despite the two standing atop bushes dozens of steps apart, even without relying on his increasingly terrifying perception, Jinayang could confirm the man's identity. This familiarity wasn't the product of accumulated intelligence, the accumulating of time, but simple intuition, an instinct. He knew everything without words. Jinayang playfully pointed behind him. There are too many people here. Why don't we talk somewhere else? Well, if this was a date, it was the lamest excuse. But thankfully, compared to the endless past they'd experienced together, or endured individually, these trivial details wouldn't be of much concern to anyone. The masked eagle remained silent, accelerating on its own, hurtling deeper into the forest. So, wood release, 4 pillars prison. Of course, Xianyang had no intention of letting the person go. Instead, he used his ability to reinforce the wooden cage. According to the habits of these stubborn people in the Anbu, if he went back to inform them immediately, then what was the point of him chatting with Jiu? What if the weird Uncle Sarutobi comes chasing after him with a big stick? Ahem. Of course, this is not to say that Shinayang is afraid of that old man Sarutobi. It is just that it is more important to have a drink and chat with his beloved beautiful eagle than to compete with the old man. I advise you all not to struggle. Before leaving, Shinayang waved his hand and sarcastically said with some disdain, if you accidentally touch any mechanism and those cages start to absorb your life energy, that's not my problem, then everyone, goodbye. Sir, Senju Shinryu just, in the basement at the root of Konoha, Danzo's confidant whispered something softly in his ear. Although he knew very well that this was definitely an act that was enough to disrupt the delicate balance in the village, Danzo, as the listener, acted as if nothing had happened, still calm and frightening. Really? She pondered for a moment, then revealed a meaningful smile. 5 years have made you grow to this point? Danzo was very familiar with this young man he had personally trained. According to Shinayu's character, it was impossible for him to do such a foolish thing just for his own selfish desires. If he was going to do it, he wouldn't have waited 5 years. The only explanation was that this little guy was already ready to break through. He just lacked an opportunity. Rather than waiting for the Uchiha to slowly build up their strength, or for Danzo himself to gain the advantage needed to annihilate them, it would be better for Shinryu to create an opportunity to disrupt the balance. Although he's never truly mastered the root, or rather, Shinryu is still far from it, but whether he likes it or not, as the head of the Senju clan, he has become a crucial piece of the village's power balance. Doing so would mean he would quickly lose the support of the village's known factions, and thus lose control of the situation. But conversely, for the Uchiha clan, even if the preparations are still incomplete, this would be the perfect opportunity to realize their ambitions. A simple tryst would undoubtedly become a trigger that would affect Konoha's situation in the foreseeable future. A clever move, but Shinryu, have you forgotten something? Danzo stood up, smiling as he left his seat. Immediately order the Konoha root to arrest Shinryu Senju. He wasn't the only player in this complex chess game. Chapter 101, Surrender. Shinryu wasn't surprised by the Anbu appearing before him. For taking Konoha's own Anbu hostage, he'd already prepared himself for isolation, perhaps even imprisonment. As a member of the root, he knew exactly where he would be held. This crime, almost tantamount to treason, would have been committed by anyone else, likely without further notice. However, since his name was Senju Shinryu, today's situation was bound to be an exception. As for being merely detained, Shinryu didn't intend to resist, or even to explain. No problem, don't be so nervous. He spread his hands to prove that he had no ill intentions. I'll just go with you. And within a short time thereafter, the news of Senju Shinayu's arrest quickly spread throughout the entire Konoha ninja village. No matter as a staunch Hokage faction, or Danzo and Uchiha who had their own ulterior motives, this news was tantamount to dropping a nuclear bomb on the village. If you have to say why, it is because Senju Shinayu plays a very special role in Konoha village. Jiraiya's disciple, that is to say, Shinayu is nominally the great-grandson of the third Hokage Sarutobi, and during the war, he did follow Hatake Tsukumo of the Hokage line to perform missions. But on the other hand, in terms of position affiliation, Shinayu belongs to the root, that is to say, in terms of superiors and subordinates, Shinayu is directly under the jurisdiction of Danzo. That's not all. As a teammate of Senju Shinayu during the Tsukumo era, Uchiha is now also a member of Konoha's secret mobile force, Anbu. As a double agent, she has always been affecting the direction of Uchiha and Konoha. But this person also has a close personal relationship with Shinayu. And even putting aside the above, Shinayu is also the patriarch of the Senju clan. Such a person may not be seen as important in a stable period, but in a sensitive period like now, his every move will affect the changes in the entire situation. Currently, among the three factions of Konoha, the Hokage faction with the three ninjas is undoubtedly the strongest, but in the current situation, two of the three ninjas have left Konoha, and the only remaining Orochimaru is at odds with Sarutobi. Beneath the powerful appearance of the Hokage faction, there are already many crises. On the other hand, the root, which had been hiding in the darkness for a long time. Not only do they have one of the largest number of Jonin in the village, but compared to before, they also have the support of the Yamanaka, Yun and other families. Now that Shinayu has been temporarily detained, the problem of multiple orders within the root has been resolved. It can be said that from a global perspective, the root is in a favorable position. Finally, there is the Uchiha clan. With a large number of Jonin and the Sharingan, they should have an overwhelming advantage, but the lack of top-level combat power has always restricted the Uchiha clan to a quagmire. The appearance of Eagle has made up for this shortcoming to some extent, but the problem now is that Eagle is not the Uchiha Madara of the past. Within the Uchiha clan, no one would recognize Uchiha Eagle as the highest power center. Compared to the elders, Eagle is always just a spy. And for the Uchiha clan, no matter whether it is the Hokage's line or the Danzo's line, as long as they start to act, the other party will surely share the same hatred and enemies. So Shinayu's temporary imprisonment is undoubtedly the best news for them. Faced with such a complex situation, the Uchiha, still hesitating, were seized by Danzo's initiative. Based on recent intelligence, Danzo, during a village meeting, openly requested that Konoha's Jonin, Minato, join in monitoring the Uchiha clan. Considering the balance of power after Shinayu's loss, Sarutobi ultimately approved this proposal. News of Minato's ascension to the rank of Kage hadn't been suppressed, meaning the Uchiha clan would soon face the watchful eye of a Kage-level powerhouse. Undoubtedly, this was Danzo's drastic measure, a last resort to prepare for a potential rebellion, after realizing Konoha was at a disadvantage in the current game against the Uchiha clan. On the one hand, it highlighted the conflict between Konoha and the Uchiha clan, making conflict almost inevitable. On the other hand, this preemptive move also placed the Uchiha clan at their most crucial point. Whether fighting or not, Konoha, and therefore Sarutobi and Danzo, were in a clear advantage. This was the fundamental reason the Sandaime approved this proposal. Thirdly, for the proud Uchiha clan, it was an almost unstoppable provocation. Even though he knew that his actions now would most likely lead him into an enemy trap, Danzo was almost certain that the Uchiha would take action. This was his conspiracy against the Uchiha clan. Soon, the arrogant Uchiha clan would be completely destroyed. Don't you have anything else to say to me? Danzo and Shinayu both had smiles of victory on their faces. Sit down. With a slight raise of his hand, the rough logs quickly broke through the ground and naturally formed into the shape of a chair. Danzo sat down calmly without any suspicion. Huh? Shinayu shook his head. I never thought that we would have such a face-to-face chat. When did you start to make this plan? That's right. Apart from the outcome of this game of chess, Shinayu never understood why Danzo had been so deliberately cultivating an opponent to be his enemy. Starting from when I made up my mind, the old man slightly closed his eyes, his voice still calm, but you are not good enough. Chapter 102, Thousands of Miles Away. But you are not good enough. Shinayu did not deny anything at the first time. In his eyes, the rather stern old man in front of him has gradually changed from the hateful bitch face at the beginning to cute. No, I mean vivid and kind. If it is just like in the previous life, following the plot of the anime, perhaps only when Shimura Danzo died, people will feel a little sad for the death of this root leader. Of course, there are people who shout that it is great, because even before his death, this old man is still trying to take hostages. Such despicable means. But for Konoha, for the people living in the land of fire, this method is absolutely necessary. They do not have the earth-shaking strength of the first generation, nor the unpredictable ability of Uchiha Madara. In order to protect the village, they can't always be high above and out of touch with the world. In the corners that people can't see, all they can do are some methods that may be called despicable. This ugly face that can throw away propriety, righteousness, integrity, and go back on its word is the last and most indispensable barrier of Konoha. Do you hope that I can inherit the root? Xianyang asked tentatively. No, Danzo's voice remained the same, even the rhythm and tone did not change. I once even hoped that you could lead Konoha to a higher place, but from the current situation, you are still too far away from this goal. He paused for a rare moment, and then continued, I have given you all the chips you deserve, but you used one move to lose everything. Are you saying that I went on a date with Eagle? Xianyang asked jokingly. Of course not, Danzo also smiled. Of course you are not going on a date. You even think that after you have mastered a part of the root and the power of the Senju clan, you can use force to solve the Uchiha problem while Sarutobi and I are checking and balancing each other. This is just a deliberate fuse you set up. Maybe you also have a trick up your sleeve, like using Minato to rescue you from the inside. But unfortunately, Minato has been sent by the Elders Council to monitor the Uchiha, and you have been imprisoned here. Your plan has failed. The power of the Senju clan has no way to stop the Uchiha clan's ambition, and soon, the crazy Uchiha clan will be completely destroyed. Danzo stood up and made a summary speech. You lost. After speaking, he wanted to turn around and leave, but Xianyang's voice without panic came from behind the old man. No. You are old. Looking at Danzo who stopped, Xianyang continued to invite him. Why don't you sit down and continue chatting? His voice was clear and indifferent. The chess pieces have been set. What happens next has nothing to do with the players. The victory or defeat is thousands of miles away. We just have to wait quietly. The dividing line where the unrest begins. Has the news been confirmed? In the Uchiha family's residence, Jing was still sitting on the main seat. He didn't speak for a long time. Although he was the great elder, as a peace advocate, he could no longer calm the crazy tribesmen. Back then, sending Eagle to the Anbu was simply a pawn intended to gain greater advantage in the distribution of benefits within the village. But the madness inherited from Uchiha Madara has eroded the minds of those in power. By using this rare spy, the Uchiha no longer seeks merely a higher position, they attempt to revise the boundaries set by the First Hokage. Konoha should be ruled by the Uchiha. Such an absurd ideal was once proposed by the man named Uchiha Madara, but after being spurned by his clan, it was personally shattered by the First Hokage, Senju Hashirama. Now, the Uchiha clan is actually trying to repeat this path. Yes, according to the information Eagle has sent back, the root will launch a surprise attack on our clan's base at 12 o'clock tonight. As for the attack location, Eagle has already roughly transmitted it back. Excellent, HMPH, this girl is quite sensible, then what are we waiting for? And so, the Uchiha's madness was ignited by this small fuse. From the time when Shinai was arrested to the time when Eagle's intelligence was transmitted back, Kagami, who was sitting on the sidelines and watching coldly, felt infinite regret for Senju Shinai, and faintly smelled a conspiracy. This feeling was very strange. Kagami, who had worked hard for the Uchiha clan for decades, was very sure that the threat did not come from the Sandaime Sarutobi. Likewise, it certainly did not come from Danzo Shimura, who had always been at odds with the Uchiha clan. So, where did this fatal threat come from? On the other hand, completely different from the situation of the Uchiha clan, the Sandaime also received intelligence from Eagle. The Uchiha clan was about to rebel. Both the statement and the content were almost identical to the letter she gave to the Uchiha clan, but, facing this reality that was most difficult for Sarutobi to accept, and the similar conclusions drawn from other Anbu and Minato, the old man's brows kept frowning, and then calmed down. After struggling for a moment, Shinobi finally made his decision. Contact the root, all personnel mobilized, removing the white sacred robes that symbolized the Hokage. Sarutobi heroes and transformed back into the fearsome ninja hero of the battlefield. Destroy the enemy before the disaster spreads. Konoha's Anbu, mobilized. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.